Chapter 209. Imperial physician Gu was invited in. After paying his respects, he said, "Based on the ideas you provided, I tried them one by one and found out the effects of the medicine you mentioned. Regarding the matter of Crimson Dream, Shunyu had used the opportunity when Imperial physician Gu was taking his pulse to speak to him in private. Especially the symptoms that appeared after contracting it, it was a disaster that would cause a large number of deaths in the future. Since Shunyu had been reborn, he naturally had to stop it if he could. Crimson Dream is colorless and odorless, so it won't cause too much harm to the human body. However, if mixed with other medicines, it will have different effects. This subject has been trying to find another medicine that can produce the effects Your Highness mentioned. Later on, this subject discovered that this subject was wrong from the very beginning. To achieve such an effect, it isn't something that can be achieved simply by mixing. The effects that Imperial physician Gu mentioned were mentioned by Shunyu before. After the disease broke out, it was no different from an epidemic. There would be high fever, coughing, and the body would become weaker and weaker. If the specific cause of the disease could not be found, the only path left was death. Imperial physician Gu took out a sealed letter from his sleeve. "I have written the prescription on this letter. Your Majesty and Your Highness, please take a look." Eunuch Meng took the prescription from Imperial physician Gu and handed it to Shang Junlin. Has Imperial physician Gu found a solution? Shunyu was most concerned about this problem. If the epidemic could not be stopped, it would be best if there was a solution. The proportion of the medicine is different, so the solution is different. However, as long as I know how to make the medicine, I can develop a solution. Imperial physician Gu said. I have troubled Imperial physician Gu with this matter. However, I hope that Imperial physician Gu will not spread this matter out for the time being. I understand. Imperial physician Gu cupped his hands. I have one more thing. Shang Junlin put the letter aside. Just say it. I have not tested it on a person yet. If you want a specific cure, you need someone to test the medicine. The palace fell into a short silence. Imperial physician Gu added, I can guarantee the safety of the person testing the medicine. Your Majesty and Your Highness, please rest assured. This medicine is quite infectious. I need an absolutely safe place. Meng Chang, point a few people to Imperial physician Gu. As for the location, choose a secluded place and set up protective measures. As for the specific arrangements, listen to Imperial physician Gu. Shunyu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that there was progress in the treatment of Fei Meng. As long as Imperial physician Gu could find a cure, they wouldn't be in a completely passive state if something really happened in the future. Calculating the time, the calamity caused by Crimson Dream would probably happen in the next 2 years. In this life, Crimson Dream had long been banned within the Great Huan region. In order to avoid attracting unnecessary attention, Crimson Dream was banned along with other medicines. Other than that, some of the banned drugs were addictive, some of them could gradually corrode a person's body, and some of them were strong drugs. Crimson Dream didn't stand out among them, as if it was just a side effect. There were also a few other drugs that were in the same situation as Crimson Dream. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Shang Junlin held Shunyu in his arms and patted his back to comfort him. I know, Your Majesty will definitely be able to handle everything. After handing over some unimportant matters to the cabinet, Shang Junlin had a lot more free time. Are you bored staying in the palace all day long? Do you want to go horseback riding with us? Shang Junlin walked in wearing a black robe. Why do you suddenly want to go horseback riding? Shunyu was in the middle of painting. When he heard this, he put down his brush. What are you painting? Shang Junlin walked over. When he lowered his head, he saw a painting of a man wearing battle armor standing upright with a sword in his hand. Yu likes to paint us wearing battle armor so much. This wasn't the first time Shunyu had painted such a picture. Out of 10 times, at least 5 of them were of him on the battlefield. These paintings were all put away by Shang Junlin and placed in a separate place. If Shunyu went to take a look, he would discover that there were many of his things placed there, including the piece of paper filled with Shang Junlin's name. Shunyu originally wanted to throw it away, but it was forcefully taken away by Shang Junlin. Shun Yu didn't know why he wanted to paint Shang Junlin wearing battle armor. Every time he sat down and wanted to paint something, he would discover that he was painting a battlefield with all kinds of Shang Junlin wearing battle armor. Shun Yu just wanted to paint something casually, anything was fine. Since he subconsciously wanted to paint Shang Junlin on the battlefield, then he painted it. Before he finished painting, Shun Yu's train of thought was interrupted. He simply stood up and said, "Maybe it's because I heard too much about your majesty going to the battlefield to kill enemies, so I wanted to paint the scenes that I didn't see with my own eyes. I said I wanted to wear it for you to see, but you didn't want to." Shang Junlin pinched the young man's cheek. It was strange. Shun Yu had painted Shang Junlin on the battlefield so many times, but when it came to seeing it with his own eyes, he faintly felt reluctant. Shun Yu and Shang Junlin came to the racecourse together. After the last time, this was the second time Shun Yu came to the racecourse. When the white horse saw him, it came over and rubbed against him intimately. Shun Yu touched the horse's head and took a piece of candy to feed it. He turned over and mounted the horse in one smooth motion. "Your Majesty, let's race." Shang Junlin mounted the horse and rode it to Shun Yu's side. "Your legs won't be able to stand it if you run too fast." Shun Yu didn't ride many horses. Every time he rode a horse, the skin on his legs would be abraded. Not only would it affect his normal walking, but it was also a kind of torture to apply medicine. That's true. Thinking of the consequences, Shun Yu gave up his initial plan. Shun Yu held the reins and let the horse walk slowly on the grass. Shang Junlin rode beside him and listened to his irrelevant words. After walking for a while, Shun Yu felt that it wasn't enough. He squeezed the horse's belly and urged it to speed up. "If my skin is abraded, then so be it. Let's have fun first." Shun Yu urged the horse to run for a while and then turned back to look at Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin was stunned by his sudden movement. After he reacted, he caught up with him. Blue sky and white clouds, green grass and green land. Under the clear sky, the horse galloped. The wind blew in their faces, making them feel carefree. Shun Yu rode to his heart's content. After he got off the horse, his legs went soft and he almost fell to the ground. Shang Junlin quickly supported him. "Is it very painful?" Shun Yu wrapped his arms around Shang Junlin's neck and was carried back by the man. He didn't feel it when he was riding a horse. After a while, the pain became more and more obvious. It was burning hot and he couldn't even move slightly. Shang Junlin carried him into the house and ordered eunuch Meng to bring the medicine. Shun Yu looked at the familiar medicine bottle and tilted his head to the side. "Why does your majesty carry this medicine everywhere you go?" Shang Junlin applied the ointment with his finger and applied it to the wound. "A Yu is so delicate. If he doesn't carry medicine with him, what will happen if he bumps into something?" The ointment was cool. When it touched the wound, Shun Yu gasped. He withdrew his leg. "It hurts. Be gentle." Shang Junlin's movements were already very gentle, but Shun Yu still felt pain. The main reason was that the wound was too special. The skin there was delicate. Shun Yu wasn't used to riding a horse. This time, he rode for a few hours in a row. The area of the wound was very large. After the ointment was applied, Shun Yu's forehead was covered with a layer of sweat. The hair on his temples was also wet. With the help of Shang Junlin, he sat up and leaned on the bed. "Your Majesty is right. I should have gotten off the horse earlier." Halfway through, Shang Junlin asked Shun Yu to stop. Shun Yu didn't listen. He liked the feeling of being free on the horse's back, so he indulged himself a little. The result was tragic. This time, he didn't know how many days it would take for him to fully recover. After a while, the Prime Minister came to find him. Shun Yu knew that Shang Junlin came to the stud farm today with several important ministers. Shun Yu lay on the bed with a tired expression. "Your Majesty, go ahead. I'll rest for a while." Shang Junlin got up and left, leaving the palace servants to serve him. Shun Yu lay on the bed for a while. He was exhausted and fell asleep not long after. In his half-awake state, he felt that someone was touching his face. "Is it Your Majesty?" He heard a chuckle. That person seemed to say something, but he couldn't hear clearly because of the thick fog. "Who is it?" Shun Yu became more sleepy. His tightly knitted brows slowly relaxed, and his consciousness slipped into a deeper abyss. When he woke up, the sky was filled with the sunset. Shunyu looked at the window, blinked his eyes, and slowly sat up. "Young master, you're awake." Mushi came in with hot water. "Did anyone come while I was asleep?" Shunyu had a headache. He pressed his fingers on his head. "I've been here all this time. I didn't see anyone come." "Why do you ask? Was it a dream?" Shunyu wasn't sure. "Nothing." "Where's Her Majesty?" "Her Majesty is still talking to several officials." "When did the Prime Minister and the others come?" "About the same time as us. Maybe a little later. I just finished tidying up here, and they arrived." "Then they must have waited for a long time." Shunyu couldn't help but hold his forehead. Shang Junlin didn't tell him. If he knew that there were officials here, he definitely wouldn't have let them wait for so long. Shunyu washed his hands and face. Imperial Physician Gu's medicine was very effective. After sleeping for a while, he didn't feel much pain. He tentatively moved his leg, but his movement was slightly stiff because it affected his injury. Mushi saw this scene and thought of something. Her face turned red. "Young master, you'd better rest in bed. If there's anything you need, just let me do it." Shunyu could tell at a glance that Mushi had misunderstood. His lips moved. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know where to start. The people who served him were all familiar with his condition. Every time Shang Junlin sated, Shunyu would lie down for a day or two. At first, Mushi was very worried. Later, she secretly asked Imperial Physician Gu. After confirming that Shunyu didn't have any abnormalities after he recovered, she was completely relieved. She was already used to this kind of situation. Her Majesty is too much. She obviously has to discuss business with the officials, but she still dragged young master along for so long. Mushi only dared to complain when Shang Junlin wasn't here. Although she knew that this kind of thing was normal, Mushi was still dissatisfied when she saw Shunyu's uncomfortable appearance. "How can you blame Her Majesty? Shouldn't you blame your young master for pestering Her Majesty?" Shunyu raised his eyebrows. If she had to say something, it was indeed him who pestered Her Majesty this time. Of course, the reason was different from what Mushi thought. Young master is not such a person. Every time, it's Her Majesty. Mushi's voice became smaller and smaller. The last few words were almost inaudible. "Every time, it's me what?" Shang Junlin's voice came from outside. Shunyu didn't even think and said, "It's Her Majesty who pesters me." The door was pushed open. Shunyu saw Shang Junlin standing outside, followed by the Prime Minister, Fang Jun, and several other officials behind Shang Junlin. The officials' expressions changed. They must have either just arrived or heard a lot. Shang Junlin said leisurely, "I want you to pester me, but..." Shunyu suddenly coughed, and the corners of his eyes turned red. Why? Why did he have to face such a scene? Chapter 210. Mushi didn't have time to think. She hurriedly stepped forward to pat Shunyu's back. Shang Junlin strode in and took Shunyu into his arms. "What's wrong?" Shunyu coughed a few times. Mushi brought some water over. Shang Junlin took it and fed it to Shunyu. "Drink some water." Shunyu lowered his head and drank the water in Shang Junlin's hand. "How long has His Majesty been here?" "Not long." "Is you feeling better?" Shunyu nodded. He was choked by himself. Now that he had calmed down, he was naturally fine. Several ministers consciously lowered their heads and stood outside. They didn't dare to look inside. Seeing Shunyu's uneasiness, Shang Junlin waved his hand to dismiss the ministers. Eunuch Meng hurriedly asked the ministers to go elsewhere. These ministers were all promoted by Shang Junlin. Today, they came to discuss some matters about starting a primary school. They had heard about Shang Junlin and Shunyu's relationship. They had also seen with their own eyes how the two interacted at the banquet. However, those were different from what they saw today. Especially the words that the maid had said today. It turned out that His Majesty had always been sticking to His Majesty. The ministers had different emotions in their hearts. Why didn't His Majesty announce his arrival? Shunyu twisted his body and sat down. "I originally just wanted to see if you were awake." I didn't expect to hear the conversation between you and your servant girl. You is telling the truth. Why are you blushing? Shang Junlin bent his finger and rubbed Shen Yu's cheek. Because of what happened just now, Shen Yu's face was still red. Shen Yu thought, is my face red because of what I said? It's obviously because these words were heard by those ministers. Shen Yu didn't feel anything when he said these words in front of Shang Junlin. But when he thought that the ministers brought by Shang Junlin would also hear these words, he just wanted to bury himself. Does your leg still hurt? Shang Junlin moved his palm down, wanting to touch it. Shen Yu hurriedly reached out to stop her. I'm much better, thanks to the ointment your majesty brought. Are you hungry? Why don't you ask them to serve us food? Shang Junlin was not annoyed when his hand was stopped. He held Shen Yu's hand in his palm. Have you finished your discussion with His Majesty? Are we just going to leave them like this? Shen Yu was already delayed for so long because of him. If he ignored the other ministers because of him, he would feel bad. We've finished our discussion. You don't have to worry. After dinner, they will go out to ride horses. Shang Junlin brought them here with the intention of letting them relax. With the natural horse farm obtained from the northern desert people, Shang Junlin wanted these ministers to be familiar with the operation of the horse farm. Although the area of the pasture was not big, the operation inside was very mature. There were many things worth learning. The ministers also knew the other reason why Shang Junlin brought them here. After dinner, they learned about the operation of the horse farm under the guidance of the servants. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin finished their dinner together and lay back on the bed. In fact, he really wanted to go out for a walk, but the position of his wound was too awkward. The friction of the cloth when he walked would rub the ointment away and worsen the injury. He could only walk less for the time being. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin stayed outside for 2 days. Except for the first day when Shang Junlin was not around, he vaguely felt that someone had appeared in the room. After that, he did not have this feeling again. He asked the guards around, but no one noticed a stranger coming in. Shen Yu could not find any clues. He wondered if he had taken his dream as real when he was in a daze. He did not tell Shang Junlin about this matter. After returning to the palace, nothing similar happened again. Shen Yu slowly put this matter to the back of his mind. The imperial court acted quickly. Shang Junlin gave the order. Before the deadline of half a month was up, they had already come up with a general plan. Shang Junlin mentioned this matter in the morning court. The specific implementation needed to be discussed in the imperial court before a detailed plan could be made. The weather gradually became hot. Shen Yu took off his clothes again and again. He leaned against the bridge and casually threw the bait in his hand into the pond. There were many ornamental fish of different colors in the pond. They followed the smell of food and swam over. The sun was dazzling, and the water was sparkling. The fish leisurely swayed their tails and jumped out of the water from time to time, waiting to be fed. Shen Yu threw another handful of bait. This was Shen Yu's new pleasure. When he had nothing to do, he would come over to feed the fish. Gongzi has been here a few times. These fish seem to recognize you. Mu Shi looked at the fish swimming in the water and sighed. They are getting bigger and bigger. They don't recognize me. They recognize the food in my hand. If he did not have food to feed them, no fish would swim out of the pond even if he stood there for a long time. Shen Yu had seen enough. He handed the bowl of fish food to the palace servant behind him. Okay, let's go back. The place where Shen Yu came to feed the fish was located between Yuzhong Palace and the Imperial Garden. When he first entered the palace, Shen Yu almost never left Yuzhong Palace. After a long time, he took the palace servants to walk around. With Gongzi's feeding, these fish have grown especially fast this year. The palace servant holding the fish food said flatteringly. Shen Yu smiled and did not speak. There were people in charge of every place in the palace. Even if he did not come, the palace servants would feed the fish. It was just that the master did not care and did not feed the fish so diligently. The wind in the palace changed quickly. Seeing that Shen Yu cared about the ornamental fish, the palace servants in charge of feeding them would also be more attentive. Shang Junlin did not care about these things at all. He did not ask about it. In the long run, the palace servants were happy to be idle. Why does a Yu like to feed the fish recently? When Shang Junlin returned to the Jade Gate Palace, Shen Yu was not there. After asking the people of the Jade Gate Palace, he found out that he had gone to feed the fish. Just as he was about to look for him, he bumped into Shen Yu and his group. Shen Yu waved his hand and motioned for the palace servants to leave. If I didn't go to feed them, I wouldn't have known that there were so many beautiful fish in the palace. Shen Yu was right. The ornamental fish that could be raised in the palace were carefully selected by the imperial household. The ordinary ones would not be sent to the palace at all. If a Yu likes them, let them send some to Yuzhang Palace. Your Majesty always indulges me like this. Didn't Imperial Physician Jiyu say that if there is a chance, let me walk outside more often? This trip can be considered as training. No matter what, a Yu is right. The court has discussed the basic regulations of the elementary school. Does a Yu want to come with me to see it? Although it was a question, Shang Junlin did not give Shen Yu any other choice other than to agree. He took him to the inner room and took out the booklet that the Prime Minister had sorted out and presented. Although the aristocratic families were dissatisfied with Shang Junlin's proposal of the elementary school, they could not say anything. They had planned to wait for the specific method to be released and then find fault with it to prevent it from developing further. They did not expect that this method, which had been discussed by the court officials, did not give them any leeway to find fault. Every possible outcome was prepared with a countermeasure. Even if they raised doubts, it would be quickly resolved. In the end, it didn't seem like they were looking for trouble. Instead, it seemed like they were working hard to perfect the specific method of doing elementary school. When Shen Yu heard Shang Junlin talk about what had happened to the aristocratic families, he laughed out loud. They probably did not expect that in the end, the result would be like this. Shen Yu could imagine the expressions on the aristocratic families' faces when they realized that something was wrong. After the news of the imperial court's plan of elementary school was revealed, it caused a heated discussion among the people in the capital. Elementary school? Are they going to teach children how to read? Not only that, as long as they want to learn, they can learn. I am quite tempted. Is it expensive? If it is too expensive, it will be difficult to afford. It is not clear for the time being. Let's wait for further news from the imperial court. It is said that it is to let people who want to learn how to read, so it should not be too expensive. It is hard to say. Look at the money spent on books, ink, paper, and inkstone. None of it is cheap. There were people who were optimistic about what the imperial court was going to do, and there were also people who were not optimistic about it. On the contrary, some merchants seemed to smell a business opportunity from this. Therefore, the Ministry of Revenue received many letters from big merchants saying that they were willing to help. Since the implementation of the new commercial law, these merchants have become more active than before. Shang Junlin looked at the booklet presented by the Ministry of Revenue and said. Shen Yu stretched his head. What are they thinking about? They said that they are willing to contribute money and effort to the new school. If they are willing, it is not impossible. However, they cannot be allowed to interfere too much. The main authority must be in the hands of the imperial court. The Minister of Revenue wrote a memorial because of this concern. If the people who contributed money and effort were all merchants, there would be a lot of hidden dangers. Shen Yu pointed at the memorial with his fingertips. Some of the unimportant things can be distributed, but the important things still have to be done by the imperial court. Because it was just an elementary school, there were not many classes, and there was not much time for classes every day. The existence of this school was purely to let the people learn how to read. If they wanted to learn more, it would still be the same as before. This matter was not something that could be done in 1 or 2 days. Seeing that there were not many places that could threaten them, the attention of the aristocratic families was slowly diverted. Compared to the affairs of the people, they were obviously more concerned about what happened in the imperial court. With the arrival of summer, the weather gradually became warmer. After washing up, Shen Yu walked to the desk in light pajamas. Shang Junlin lowered his head, his brows furrowed tightly. What is it, Your Majesty? Shen Yu stretched out his hand and wanted to smooth the man's frown. It's raining heavily in Lin County. I'm afraid there will be a flood. What was spread out beside Shang Junlin's hand was the report from Lin County. Ever since the establishment of the Great Huan dynasty, there had been countless floods in Lin County. Just after Shang Junlin ascended the throne, there had been no less than 5 floods. Your Majesty, don't worry. Nothing will happen. Shun Yu walked to Shang Junlin's side and sat down, rubbing his forehead. I hope so. However, things did not develop as they had hoped. For the next few days, the news from Lin County was not good. In just a few days, the water level of the river near Lin County had risen a lot. The atmosphere in the imperial court was getting colder and colder. Lin County was very far from the capital, so it took a lot of time for the news to arrive. No one knew what the situation was in Lin County now. Shang Junlin had already issued the order to migrate. In the face of a natural disaster, they had to save as many people as possible. Shun Yu lived deep in the imperial harem, so he could feel that the atmosphere was not right recently. For a few days, there was no news from Lin County. About 5 days later, the latest news finally came. There was a flood in Lin County. Fortunately, the response was timely and the damage was minimized. The ministers in the imperial court heaved a sigh of relief. However, Shun Yu did not let down his guard so quickly. He remembered that the fierce epidemic in his previous life happened after the flood. He was not sure if it was this time. Chapter 211. What is you worried about? Shang Junlin walked in from outside. Eunuch Meng closed the umbrella and stood aside. He took a clean handkerchief from the palace servant and handed it to Shang Junlin. It was raining heavily outside. Even with an umbrella, raindrops still fell on the man's body. Shang Junlin picked up the handkerchief and casually wiped himself before walking towards Shen Yu. Seeing Shang Junlin, Shen Yu's brows relaxed and he greeted him. I'm thinking about how long this rain will last. It had started raining in the capital for the past 2 days. The pitter-patter had not stopped. Shen Yu was not only referring to the rain in the capital, but also the rain in Lin County. It had been raining in Lin County for half a month and there was no sign of the rain stopping. The people in Lin County had been moved to a safe place, but their belongings were still there. It was impossible to leave them alone. Thanks to a use flood control method, although the rain is heavy this time, it did not cause much damage. The dam is stable and there is not much danger for the time being. Shang Junlin did not expect that Shen Yu would be so worried about this matter that he could not even sleep well at night. In fact, compared to the previous few times, the situation in Lin County was the least serious this time. Your Majesty, you must pay attention to the epidemic. I know. The imperial court has already sent imperial physicians over. With Imperial Physician Wu as the leading physician, almost all the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital who have made contributions in this area have gone. Shang Junlin touched the corner of Shen Yu's eyes. Yu is so worried. Is it because of the dream you had? What? Dream? Thinking of the excuse that he had found for himself before, Shen Yu suddenly fell silent. Yu, don't worry. No matter what you dreamed of, I will not let it happen. No matter how terrible it is only a dream. Your Majesty is right. I was possessed. No matter what, it was something that happened in his previous life. He did not need to be so nervous because of what happened in his previous life. So what if it really happened? This time, they had already taken precautions. They would not be as helpless as they were in his previous life. Seeing that Shun Yu had recovered, Shang Junlin took his hand and led him to the soft couch to sit down. Didn't you say that the kitchen made new snacks a few days ago? I want to try it. Mushi, go to the kitchen, Shen Yu said. Yes, young master. It took a lot of effort to make this new snack. While waiting, Shang Junlin ordered Eunuch Meng to bring the chess pieces over. It's been a long time since I've played chess. Yu, let's play a game. Shen Yu had no objections. This time, Shen Yu played a black stone. On the chessboard, the black pieces surrounded the white pieces layer by layer. Every time a piece was placed, the white pieces became weaker. Your Majesty, you don't have to go easy on me. Shen Yu held a black stone and said helplessly. When he first placed the stone, he made a few wrong moves. He should have lost, But Shang Junlin deliberately went easy on him and turned the situation around. You can't think of anything else when you're playing chess with me. The white chess piece was placed, and the situation that was supposed to be a sure loss changed. On the chessboard, the white and black pieces were evenly matched. Outside the chessboard, Xinyu had no time to care about anything else. Until Mu Shi came in with the snacks, there was still no winner between the two of them. Smelling the fragrance, Xinyu came back to his senses from the game. Placed on the jade plate were snacks in the shape of small animals. They were white and chubby and looked very cute. Different shapes had different tastes. Xinyu preferred sweet snacks. He usually ate light-colored snacks. Some of them were soft, and some were hard. Xinyu liked all of them. Putting down the chess piece, Xinyu said, "I don't know when the winner will be decided. Your Majesty, why don't you try the snacks first?" "Sure." Shang Junlin put away the chess piece. Xinyu sat opposite Shang Junlin and introduced the flavors of the snacks to him. Rabbit-shaped ones are sweet, butterfly-shaped ones are sour, and black wolf-shaped ones are salty. Shang Junlin looked at the snacks on the jade plate. Each one was round. Even the black wolf that Xinyu mentioned didn't look majestic at all. "Which one does you like best?" "Rabbit," Xinyu answered without thinking. Shang Junlin wasn't surprised by this answer. After eating the snacks, the rain outside became lighter. Xinyu walked to the window and looked outside. "What are you looking at?" Shang Junlin walked over and stood behind Xinyu. Enveloped by the man's scent, Xinyu's unclear emotions gradually disappeared. He leaned back and leaned on Shang Junlin's shoulder. Xinyu suddenly felt a little strange. During this time, he had been anxious about Lin County. However, it shouldn't be like this. Lin County's situation wasn't as serious as it was in his previous life. Even if he was worried, it shouldn't be like this. He had experienced so many things. Even if it was a matter of life and death, he had never been like this. This was very abnormal. "Your Majesty, do you feel that something is wrong with me recently?" "Huh?" Shang Junlin was stunned by his question. "Is it because of Lin County's situation?" Xinyu raised his hand and covered his heart. "I thought so before." Shang Junlin frowned. "I asked Imperial Physician Jiyu to enter the palace." "Your Majesty, have you forgotten that Imperial Physician Jiyu is studying Feimeng?" Because of this matter, Imperial Physician Jiyu hadn't entered the palace for a while. "I sent someone to ask about the progress." If Shang Junlin was determined to do something, Xinyu couldn't dissuade him and could only let him do as he wished. When the little eunuch who was sent to the palace came back, he brought Imperial Physician Jiyu. "Has Imperial Physician Jiyu found anything?" Xinyu didn't expect that Shang Junlin's people would directly bring Imperial Physician Jiyu into the palace. "I have found a way to deal with it." Imperial Physician Jiyu had dark circles under his eyes due to lack of sleep, but he was in good spirits. Shang Junlin stopped Imperial Physician Jiyu from speaking and said, "Let's take a look at Guijuan's body first." Imperial Physician Jiyu stepped forward and took Xinyu's pulse. "Has Guijun been overly worried recently? Has your sleep been affected?" "Yes," Xinyu nodded. "It's easy for me to dream recently." The dream was grotesque and variegated. Every day, there were different fragments. Xinyu tried to piece them together, but found that these fragments didn't have any order and were only fragmented content. "I have prescribed a prescription to calm your nerves. You can take it first. If it doesn't work, I will think of other ways." Imperial Physician Gu's prescription was divided into two types, oral medicine and medicinal bath. At night, Xinyu soaked in hot water with medicinal herbs. Her mind gradually relaxed. After the bath, Shang Junlin carried her out. Xinyu nestled in his arms. The lingering smell of medicinal herbs still lingered at the tip of her nose. "Your Majesty, have I become the smell of medicinal herbs?" Xinyu raised her hand and sniffed it. "Does it smell bad?" "What nonsense are you talking about?" Shang Junlin put her on the bed and leaned on her. "It smells good." There was a faint medicinal smell on the young man's body. It didn't make people feel bitter because it was a medicine to calm the nerves. Smelling it could make people feel relaxed. That night, Xinyu slept very well. She quietly nestled in the man's arms and slept until dawn. When she woke up the next day, All kinds of emotions in her heart faded away, leaving only peace. The rain stopped. The palace servants opened the windows and the sunlight shone in, as if taking away all the obscure emotions. Shunyu stretched her arms and got out of bed. Gongzi. Mushi came over and tied up Shunyu's hair. After tidying up, Shunyu stood up. I'm going out for a walk. The imperial court didn't hide the incident in Lin County. The people learned about it from the People's newspaper. Lin County. I remember that this place has always been prone to floods. Yes, about 4 or 5 years ago, it rained heavily for more than a month. The river broke the dam and many people died. The situation this year seems to be fine. Because the officials in Lin County don't dare to leave the people alone. They immediately took measures to deal with it. Have you forgotten what happened 4 or 5 years ago? At that time, all the officials in Lin County were killed by 1,000 cuts. How could we forget? It was also raining that day. The ground of the execution ground was dyed red. Yes, Her Majesty was very angry at that time. Many officials in the capital were also killed. Later, the officials sent to Lin County didn't dare to ignore this incident. After all, if they didn't handle it well, they would lose their heads. Her Majesty also sent officials who are good at water conservancy. They seemed to have been repairing it since 2 years ago. This time, the damage caused was small because the water conservancy was repaired. Her Majesty has foresight. Otherwise, I don't know how much damage we would have suffered this time. I heard that the rain this year wasn't lighter than the previous one. Lin County, which was being talked about by the people, welcomed a sunny day. The people huddled together looked up at the sky and felt the warmth of the sunlight shining on their bodies. Gradually, their faces revealed joyful expressions. It's sunny. The sun is out. Her Majesty didn't lie to us. The battered and exhausted people instantly hugged each other. They had waited in fear for so long, and finally, a sunny day came. A man in an official's robe came out after hearing the commotion and raised his hand to block the sunlight. The sky was finally sunny. Joy spread among the crowd. Suddenly, a person collapsed without warning and screamed. The man in the official's robe touched his forehead. I'll go and take a look. Okay, be careful. After a while, the subordinate came back with a heavy expression. It's a fever. The man in the official's robe's heart sank. Separate the crowd and call a doctor. The scene they didn't want to see the most might happen. The joy brought by the sunny day was covered with a layer of gloominess. Sir, the imperial physician sent by the imperial court has arrived. Quickly invite him in. Imperial physician Wu took the lead and went to the patient's place. Several officials followed him. One of them said, as soon as we found something wrong, we separated the people. We'll have to trouble the imperial physician to take a look. Imperial physician Wu felt the pulse one by one. His heart sank slightly. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly remembered what Gui Jun said after he was summoned to the palace before he went to Subei. The situation of these people was very similar to what Gui Jun said. Young master, I found this. In Yuzhong Palace, Mu Shi handed a small ball of paper to Shunyu. Where did it come from? When I went out today, I was bumped by a little palace maid. When I came back, I found this on my body. Mu Shi didn't know what was written on it and didn't open it without permission. Open it and take a look. Mu Shi leaned to the side and opened the paper. There's only one address written on it. Oh. Mu Shi looked at it several times, but there was only one address in the middle. She hesitated and said, how should we deal with this? Shunyu supported his chin with one hand and said casually, throw it away. It's not worth caring about things of unknown origin. Yes. Mu Shi had always followed Shunyu's words. When she worked with Shunyu, she knew best that she shouldn't ask questions that she shouldn't ask. She shouldn't be too curious, because curiosity was the most likely thing to ruin things. Although this paper ball was given to her, she didn't have anything on her at all. Then the other party's target was obviously Shunyu. Mu Shi would never allow the young master to be hurt because of her. Young master, should we investigate that palace maid? If you go to look for her now, you probably won't find her. Shunyu chuckled. The fact was just as Shunyu said. When Mushi went to look for her that day, she didn't find the palace maid at all. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. Outside the palace, in the sky room of the Enchanting Tower, a tall young man stood by the window. He was dressed in white and had a cold temperament, but his eyes were covered with a layer of white cloth. "You're just a child. Why don't you have any curiosity?" The man in white spoke. His tone seemed to be very distressed. "Scholar, do you need me to bring the person here?" If no one spoke, almost no one would notice that there was another person in the room besides the man in white. It was a man wrapped in a pitch-black robe. His voice was slightly hoarse. He half knelt on the ground and his attitude was very respectful. The Emperor of the Great Huan Kingdom protects people like protecting his eyes. "How can you bring the person here?" "Last time, I finally met him. Unfortunately, time was limited and I couldn't talk to him." The man in white was used to his subordinate's silence and said to himself, "It's the first time we meet. I should prepare well." Chapter 212. After that day, there were no more abnormalities in the palace. Shunyu thought about it and told Shang Junlin about it. The location on the note was outside the palace. It was not a secret place. Shunyu and Shang Junlin had even been to this place before. It was unknown whether the person on the other side was conceited or well prepared to meet here. "Where's the note?" Shang Junlin frowned slightly after hearing it. "I asked someone to throw it away." That person's purpose was unclear. He only gave a location. Who knows what he wanted to do? "I simply pretended that I didn't see it. It was just a note without any beginning or end." Shunyu would be stupid if he really went to meet someone because of this. "You is really..." Shang Junlin stroked Shunyu's cheek. "Just throw it away. It's not a big deal. What does that palace maid look like? I'll ask someone to check it out." Shunyu called Mushi. According to Mushi's description, Eunuch Meng led people to search the entire palace and found a match. "Your Majesty, Your Highness, I found someone. But, according to that person, she has never seen Mushi. When Mushi went to meet her in person, she acted as if she didn't know her at all." Eunuch Meng reported the results of his investigation. "Why didn't Mushi find her when she went to look for her that day?" Shunyu asked. "Because that palace maid was in a coma for the whole day. She only woke up on the third day. The other palace maids with her also said that they didn't see her that day." Eunuch Meng's investigation was very detailed. He found out a lot of things that Mushi didn't find out. So, either this palace maid is lying, or this matter really has nothing to do with her. Someone took her identity and sent the note to Mushi. Shunyu pondered. The palace was heavily guarded. How did that person pass through the layers of guards? Was it someone who was already in the palace, or was it someone from outside? Shunyu suddenly remembered the person who suddenly appeared in his room at the horse farm that day. If this person really existed and was not someone he dreamed of, was there any connection between this and what happened in the palace this time? After Eunuch Meng finished his report and left, Shunyu was still thinking about this matter. "Why don't we send someone to that place to take a look?" Shang Junlin sat beside Shunyu and pulled her into his embrace. "The location on the note is Enchanting Tower. It's too high profile. I don't know what he wants to do." Shunyu half closed his eyes, various thoughts flashing through his mind. "No matter what they want to do, we will not let anyone have the chance to hurt you." Shang Junlin ordered the hidden dragon guards to secretly investigate the guests who appeared in Enchanting Tower and submit a list of suspicious people. At the same time, the security in the palace was tightened, especially in Yuzhang Palace. Those with unknown identities and insignificant people were not allowed to enter. The hidden dragon guards submitted the list of people who came to the capital and stayed in Enchanting Tower. Shang Junlin opened the list and let Shunyu take a look. The list listed everyone's background. To the hidden dragon guards, these things were not difficult to investigate. However, they could not determine who was suspicious just by looking at the list. "How's the situation at Enchanting Tower?" "It's the same as usual. Nothing unusual. If the person on the other side really wants to see me, he will find a chance to see me." Under the candlelight, Shunyu's eyes were cold. "We shouldn't be the ones who should be anxious. That's right. Shang Junlin put his hand on Shen Yu's hand. The young man's body temperature had always been low. It was as if he needed to be held in someone's arms to warm up. Shen Yu leaned on the man lazily. There is one thing that I didn't tell your majesty. I thought that I mistook the dream as reality. However, after Mu Shi suddenly received a note from an unknown source, I thought about it carefully. It shouldn't be my imagination. What is it? Shang Junlin stopped stroking the back of Shen Yu's hand. That day, after I went to the horse farm, I fell asleep in the evening. I felt that someone appeared in the house. I thought it was your majesty. After I asked Mu Shi, I found out that no one came in at that time. This was one of the reasons why Shen Yu mistook the dream as reality. At that time, he was sleeping in the inner room. Mu Shi was guarding the outer room. There were also guards outside. It was impossible for anyone to sneak in quietly. Why didn't you tell me at that time? The hand that was originally loosely covering the back of Shen Yu's hand suddenly clenched. Shang Junlin felt a lingering fear. If that person wanted to harm a Yu, wouldn't he not know the reason when it happened? A Yu, no matter what happens in the future, you have to tell me, okay? The man's tone was low. Shen Yu could feel the nervousness in Shang Junlin's heart under his seemingly calm tone. He rubbed the man's shoulder. I didn't feel any malice from that person. After I woke up, I didn't feel any discomfort in my body. Otherwise, I would definitely tell your majesty. Your majesty, don't worry. Didn't Imperial Physician Gu check my pulse later? I'm really fine. I'm still worried. Let Imperial Physician Gu take a closer look. It's already so late. Don't bother Imperial Physician Gu. The distance from the outside of the palace to Yuzhong Palace was not short. I'll send someone to pick him up, Meng Chang. Eunuch Meng pushed the door open and walked in. Your Majesty, what are your orders? Arrange for a few people to bring Imperial Physician Gu to the palace. If it was something else, Shen Yu would persuade Shang Junlin and he would most likely listen. However, when it came to Shen Yu's health, Shang Junlin was very insistent. Shen Yu's persuasion was fruitless, so he could only give up. It was also good to let Imperial Physician Gu take a look at Shang Junlin. When Imperial Physician Gu arrived, he was stopped by Shang Junlin before he could greet him. Let Gui Jun take a look at him directly. Shen Yu stretched out his hand. His arm was very thin. After more than a year of recuperation, his body was very well nourished. His originally pale skin had become lustrous, just like the best mutton fat white jade. After Imperial Physician Gu finished taking Guijuan's pulse, he was slightly relieved. He was called to the palace in the middle of the night. He thought that there was a big problem with Guijuan's health. Guijuan's health is fine. Your Majesty and Gui Jun can rest assured. Shen Yu withdrew his hand and covered his arm with his wide sleeves. He lowered his head and tidied up his sleeves. I told you he was fine, but your Majesty didn't believe me. Now your Majesty can rest assured, right? It's naturally the best that a Yu is fine. A new memorial was handed over from Lin County. It first said that the heavy rain in Lin County had stopped. Before the courtiers could breathe a sigh of relief, the next news stunned them. There was an epidemic in Lin County. This was more difficult to deal with than a flood. An epidemic was often accompanied by a large number of deaths. It was a heavy blow to every place where an epidemic occurred. Your Majesty, please send more people. We must not let the epidemic spread. The imperial court was busy again. Orders were issued one after another and were carried out in an orderly manner. Young master, I just received news from the palace servants in the front hall that there was an epidemic in Lin County. Shen Yu's hand paused. The words he had written were scrapped. He put down the pen and folded the paper. How is the situation? The specific situation is not clear. Not long after, Eunuch Meng asked for an audience. Shen Yu asked Mu Shi to bring Eunuch Meng in. Eunuch Meng respectfully bowed to Shen Yu and said, His Majesty asked me to come over and tell you that there will be a meeting in the main hall today. He asked you not to wait and to eat first. Eunuch Meng said a lot of things, all of which were instructions to Shen Yu. Shen Yu could almost imagine Shang Junlin's expression when he was giving these instructions. Is the situation very serious? Shen Yu asked. Eunuch Meng reacted for a moment before he realized what Shen Yu was talking about. He was not surprised that Shen Yu knew about this. Shang Junlin never hid anything from him about the imperial court. Eunuch Meng acted according to the emperor's instructions, so naturally, he would not hide anything. The imperial court does not know the specific situation. His Majesty sent Imperial Physician Wu, who is good at treating epidemics, in advance. It should not be too serious. You don't have to worry too much. Eunuch Meng still had to go to Shang Junlin's side to serve him, so he did not stay for long. After he left, Shen Yu lost interest in writing. Lin County. Imperial Physician Wu led the other imperial physicians and local doctors from the capital to treat the local people. The officials of Lin County were very cooperative. The sick people were separated, and the healthy people lived in another place. Although the epidemic came unexpectedly, there was no big trouble under the arrangement of Imperial Physician Wu and the others. Imperial Physician Wu personally saw many patients and wrote down the symptoms of these people. The more he observed, the more frightened he became. The situation that did not happen in Subei happened in Lin County. Imperial Physician Wu did not dare to delay and hurriedly wrote down his findings in a memorial. He found a time when there was no one and came to Lin County's government office. Imperial Physician Wu, you have worked hard during this time. It's not hard. This is what I should do. I came here today because I have something important to ask Darren. Imperial Physician Wu, please speak. About this epidemic, I made a record. I hope Darren can help to send it to the capital. Imperial Physician Wu did not write anything that should not be written. He remembered what Shen Yu had told him. The contents of the memorial would be confusing to people who did not know the inside story. Imperial Physician Wu's memorial was mixed in with the other memorials in Lin County and sent to the capital. This memorial was written about the specific behavior of the patients after they were infected with the epidemic. After the cabinet dealt with it, it was sent to the palace together. During this time, the imperial court was busy with the matters in Lin County. Shen Yu sat next to Shang Junlin and occasionally read a few memorials. Imperial Physician Wu's memorial was mixed in with the other memorials and was not eye-catching. After Shang Junlin picked up the memorial, Imperial Physician Wu's memorial was exposed. Shen Yu took out the memorial and opened it. The contents of the memorial immediately attracted Shen Yu's attention. After reading it, Shen Yu felt that the dust had settled. The man-made natural disaster in his previous life happened again in this life. The matter of Fei Meng had not been solved yet, but these people had delivered themselves to his door. Shen Yu's hand that was placed on the memorial gradually clenched. Because he was using too much strength, his knuckles turned white. When he closed his eyes, the image of the people lying on the ground in pain after the epidemic appeared in his mind. No one treated them. As long as they got close, they would be infected. The hope in his eyes was extinguished little by little, and in the end, only numbness was left. All of this was caused by the ambition of some people. His fingers were forcibly pried open and the memorial in his hand was taken away. What are you thinking about? Why are you so lost in thought? According to Imperial Physician Wu's memorial, the epidemic in Lin County this time may not be a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Shen Yu held Shang Junlin's hand tightly, as if he was holding on to the only duckweed. Shang Junlin finished reading the memorial quickly. The aura on his body became more and more piercingly cold. This matter, Jin will investigate to the end. The people who did this probably did not expect that we would be prepared. No matter what kind of fruit they wanted to pluck, they could only watch helplessly as they failed step by step. Chapter 213. The symptoms on Imperial Physician Wu's booklet almost overlapped with what Shen Yu knew in his previous life, but whether it was the same as in his previous life still needed to be verified. Imperial Physician Ji Yu was once again called into the palace. Shen Yu handed Imperial Physician Wu's booklet to him. Imperial Physician Ji Yu, take a look. Isn't the effect of the medicine produced by Fei Meng very similar? The more Imperial Physician Ji Yu read, the more astonished he felt. He had spent too much time studying Fei Meng, so he naturally knew better than anyone what the symptoms would be after being infected with it. This subject is willing to go to Lin County and solve the problem there. At this moment, Imperial physician Gu finally understood why the emperor and the nobles wanted him to study such a thing. It was because only by making preparations in advance would they not be caught off guard after the incident happened. Imperial physician Gu traveled in a light carriage to Lin County. If someone really did make a move in Lin County, Your Majesty should send people to pay attention to suspicious people around Lin County. Shen Yu always felt that the person who did this might not have left Lin County. Generally, people who did this kind of thing like to see the results of their own creation with their own eyes. Shen Yu's guess was right. The person was still in a small county near Lin County. At the inn. The matter has been settled. It's time to go back. A man in a grey robe said. Wait a little longer. A man with a goatee sitting opposite him said. The man in the grey robe said anxiously, if we wait any longer, what if it arouses suspicion? We are legitimate merchants passing by. We are going to Lin County to purchase goods and sell them to other places. Even if it's a search, we have the necessary permits. What are you afraid of? The man with the goatee was dissatisfied. I feel a little uneasy. You should change your courage. You are always worried about everything. If you were really afraid, you wouldn't have come with me in the first place. The man with the goatee sneered. He didn't want to come with this person in the first place. He was always timid and overcautious. It would only bring him trouble. If this person didn't say that he wanted to pursue stability, he would have made a move on the first day he came. Why would he wait until now? People came and went outside the inn in a hurry. Everyone had a dignified expression. He knew why. It was because Lin County, which was not far away, was suffering from the epidemic. The two places were too close, and they were worried that the epidemic in Lin County would spread here. What do you think if I turn this place into a living hell? Don't do too much. If they find out, the punishment is small, but if you ruin the plan, I don't want to be implicated by you and lose my life for nothing. The grey-robed man's tone was threatening. Got it. Let's go and take a look at the situation in Lin County. What can Lin County do? If we want to do something, we should do it bigger. The situation in Linxian was effectively suppressed. It was indeed very serious because people kept getting sick. However, it was not that serious. Although there were many people who got sick, with the efforts of Imperial Dr. Wu and the others, although these people could not recover, they would not be in any danger in a short time. Unlike the painful and oppressive atmosphere that outsiders had imagined, everyone in Lin County was in good spirits. Lin County had been sealed off. People outside could not enter, and people inside could not come out. If the grey-robed man and the man with the goatee wanted to get news of Lin County, they could only go through the mouths of others. The people outside did not know the truth. They spread the word as horrible as possible. Everyone said so, so the two of them did not doubt the authenticity of the news. Paper could not wrap fire. Things that were not mentioned in the civilian newspaper still spread to the capital through word of mouth. Is the epidemic in Lin County true or false? It's fake. It's not even mentioned in the civilian newspaper. It's not fake. The epidemic really happened in Lin County. Now, Lin County is not allowed to enter or leave. Where did you hear the news? Why haven't I heard about it? I heard it from my relatives and traveling merchants. They travel extensively and are much more well informed than us. If it's true, why is there nothing in the civilian newspaper? It can't be that the imperial court has not heard the news that we all heard, right? Is the situation this time the same as last year's in Subei? It can't be. After last year's incident, no one would dare to commit crimes again, right? For a moment, the discussion about this matter surpassed any other matter. The imperial court still did not give a clear answer. Mu Shi reported this matter to Shen Yu. Now, Ying Hua had spread a layer of information network in Dahuan. News from all over the country could be passed to Shen Yu's ears through this network. Why don't you tell the people about this? Mu Shi was puzzled. Shen Yu did not answer. Instead, he said, habit is a terrible thing. In the past, when there were no civilian newspapers, the people received news from all over the country. After there were civilian newspapers, they became the people's source of news about all kinds of things in Dahuan. Now, as long as there is no news from the civilian newspaper, the people will be skeptical about the incident in Lin County. Mushi thought about it and found that it was true. His Majesty naturally has his reasons for not doing it. If the person behind the scenes knew the truth, how could this play continue? The news about Lin County became more and more intense. Seeing that the imperial court did not explain, the rumors became more and more outrageous. Shunyu could get new developments from all over the country through Yinghua every day. It had to be said that the person who chose to start with Lin County made a very good move. Lin County was far away from the capital. It took a lot of time to send news back and forth. During this time, it was very easy to do something. Brother is going to Lin County. Imperial physician Ji Yu was packing his luggage when Ji Yu Huai, who had just returned home from court, walked in. Xiao Huai, where did you hear this news? Imperial physician Ji Yu turned around. No one knew that he was going to Lin County except for the two people in the palace. Logically speaking, Ji Yu Huai should not have known. If I didn't ask, would I not know where you went after you left? Ji Yu Huai's eyelashes drooped. There was an indescribable feeling in his voice. He knew that Imperial physician Ji Yu had been studying Fei Meng. He had guessed this matter. He had been investigating Fei Meng and had some understanding of the situation in Lin County. How could it be? Imperial physician Ji Yu put down what he was doing and walked towards Ji Yu Huai. Even if you didn't ask, I would tell you. You are my younger brother. I will not hide it from anyone but you. Brother, can you not go? It is very dangerous there. Ji Yu Huai lowered his voice. He suddenly felt like a young boy who was acting spoiled to him. Did His Majesty ask brother to go? I can go to the palace to find His Majesty and ask His Majesty to change someone else. There are so many imperial physicians in the imperial hospital. Why must brother go? Xiao Huai. Imperial physician Ji Yu grabbed Ji Yu Huai's arm. It was not His Majesty. Brother wanted to go himself. His Majesty did not agree at first. Imperial physician Ji Yu pulled Ji Yu Huai to sit down and explained in a gentle voice. In the beginning, Shang Junlin did not agree with Imperial physician Ji Yu going to Lin County. The reason was simple. He needed to stay behind to look after Guojuan's health. It was Imperial physician Ji Yu who fought for this opportunity. He had studied Fei Meng for so long. In terms of understanding, no one in the imperial hospital could surpass him. If he went himself, he would have a better chance. He also knew that Ji Yu Huai did not allow him to go because he was worried about him. He raised a hand to pat the head of the youth who was already taller than him and comforted him. Brother will be fine. I want to go with brother. Ji Yu Huai suddenly spoke. No. Imperial physician Ji Yu refused without thinking. The situation in Lin County is strange. I will ask His Majesty for permission to investigate. I will not interfere with brother's decision. Brother, don't stop me, okay? Ji Yu Huai was a man of his words. When he went to court the next day, he took the initiative to volunteer. Shang Junlin was already considering suitable candidates. Ji Yu Huai was the one he was most satisfied with. However, since Imperial physician Ji Yu wanted to go, he did not want to put the two brothers in danger. Therefore, he did not say anything. Have you thought it through? Shang Junlin gave him a chance to change his mind. Yes. This subject is willing to work for Da Huan and help His Majesty. Ji Yu Huai's attitude was firm. Since you have such a heart, I will fulfill your wish. Thank you, Your Majesty. After court, Shang Junlin returned to Yuzhong Palace and told Shen Yu about what happened in court. It's just right. If Ji Yu Huai goes, Imperial physician Ji Yu can go with his people. He cares so much about this brother that he did not hesitate to go with him. He should be able to protect him. Did Imperial physician Ji Yu tell General Ji Yu about this? Shen Yu went around to Shang Junlin's side and sat down. Ji Yu Huai should have guessed it himself. He was originally investigating Fei Meng, so it's normal for him to have some understanding of the situation in Lin County. Ji Yu Huai's people and Shang Junlin's hidden dragon guards were both investigating Fei Meng. Both sides would occasionally cross paths. Shang Junlin sent the hidden dragon guards to investigate Fei Meng to Lin County. Jiyu Huai made the conclusion based on this. General Jiyu is also fine. He is the most suitable candidate. Maybe he can find some useful clues during this trip to Lin County. As the two of them were talking, Mu Shi suddenly came in with something in her hands. Young master, this servant found this. What is it? Shen Yu did not take it. Instead, he looked at the thing in Mu Shi's hands. It was a piece of jade. It was not big, only about half the length of a finger. It was completely white. There seems to be words on it. Shen Yu said. Yes, the content is the same as the note from last time. Where did this thing come from? Shang Junlin asked. Replying to your majesty, this servant found it when I was tidying up young master's clothes today. Clothes? Which one? The one that young master wore outside the palace. The clothes Shen Yu wore in the palace and outside the palace were different. If he did not leave the palace, the latter would not be useful. Investigate. Shang Junlin's voice was cold. During this period of time, if there was a chance to get close to Guojuan's clothes, investigate it thoroughly. Shen Yu did not think that this jade was put there by the palace people. Maybe it was left outside the palace that day. He just did not know why it was only discovered today. After he told Shang Junlin his guess, the man's face became colder. After knowing that Shen Yu's room might have been entered, he sent people to investigate inside and out. However, they did not find any clues. Now, they found something left by that person in Shen Yu's clothes. Shang Junlin's displeasure rose to the extreme. Yingxing Tower. I also gave him the jade. I was worried that he did not see it, so I asked someone to pass him a note. It was written with the characters Da Huan. It has been so many days. Why hasn't he come to see me? How about I go to the palace to see him in person? Forget it. It is so difficult to enter the palace. It is better to think of a way to get him out. Let's go to Count North's residence. As his brother, I came from afar. I should see his family. Count North's residence welcomed an uninvited guest. Looking at the man in white who only showed the lower half of his face, Count North seemed to see something terrible. He opened his eyes wide and was almost speechless. Who are you? Chapter 214. Sir Zhenbei did not expect to see a stranger as soon as he arrived at the study. The man stood in front of the desk with his back to him and seemed to be looking at something on it. Hearing the footsteps, the man turned back. For a moment, Sir Zhenbei's mind went blank. The memory hidden in the depths of his heart was evoked. Suddenly, he seemed to see the woman standing under the peach tree and smiling at him again. The man was obviously a man, but his face was too similar to the one in his memory. Even the curve of his lips was exactly the same. He blurted out, "Who are you? How did you get in?" Sir Zhenbei barely suppressed all kinds of emotions in his heart and asked. The study was an important place and was more strictly guarded than other places. The man's face was covered with white silk, but he could walk freely in the mansion without being discovered by anyone. It was enough to show that he was powerful and Sir Zhenbei would not take him lightly. Of course I walked in. The man in white chuckled. Who are you? Sir Zhenbei frowned and asked. Seeing my face, you can still ask this question. I think you don't have any feelings for your wife who died young. Don't slander me, Sir Zhenbei said fiercely. The man in white put away the smile on his face and said coldly, if you have feelings for her, why did you let her child enter the harem? Sir Zhenbei stammered and could not speak. No matter how he found excuses for himself afterwards, it was true that he sent his son into the harem with his own hands. Isn't he living a good life now? Who in the world can treat him like His Majesty? Count North Marquis told himself for the umpteenth time that he had facilitated this matter, which was beneficial to Shen Yu. No matter how he's doing now, you can't deny your selfishness in doing those things. Seeing that he's doing well now, I won't fuss over this matter with you. Why don't we talk about everything that happened to him before he entered the palace in Count North's residence? Are you here to fight for justice for him? Where were you in the early years? Where were you when he was chased when he was young? Don't you think it's too late to talk about this now? Why don't you ask him if he owes you a favor? This is between me and him. You don't have to worry about it. Since I'm here now, I won't let anyone have the chance to hurt him again. As for those who hurt him before, I'll remember it. Wait. Slow. Forget it. Why did they only come now? Because that person had hidden him well. He only found out about his whereabouts a few days ago. After he found out, he immediately dealt with the matters of the clan and rushed here. The man in white left as quietly as he came. Duke Shunbei sat on the chair, his whole body weak. He never knew that there was such a terrible person behind Shunyu's mother. Just by simply standing in front of him, he gave off an extremely oppressive feeling, making people unable to raise any thoughts of resistance. Does Shunyu know about this person's arrival? Moreover, the words he said made the residents of Northern Marquis on the verge of collapse. If the other party really wanted to do something, they would definitely not be able to resist. Cold sweat slid down from his forehead. Duke Shunbei had all kinds of thoughts in his mind. He couldn't let everything in the residence of Northern Marquis be destroyed in his own hands. The only way now was to find Shunyu and strike first. No matter whether that person stood on Shunyu's side or on his opposite side, he couldn't let the two people easily unite. Otherwise, everything he had would be finished. Why did the scholar come here specially to scare Duke Shunbei? The man in black, who had always been silent, suddenly spoke. He originally thought that the scholar would do something to them when he went to the residence of Northern Marquis, but he just said a few words. His scholar was never a kind person. If he was, he would have been swallowed by that place and not even his bones would be left. But the scholar didn't uphold the style of the residents of Northern Marquis, who had abused Shunyu before. He didn't make people beg for death. If I don't scare him, how can he tell my brother about me with exaggerated details? He refused to come out of the palace to see me, so I had to think of other ways. The man in white said in a careless tone. Aren't you worried that Duke Shunbei will deliberately distort the facts? My brother can't be so stupid to believe what others say. If Shunyu was really stupid, why did he have to go through so much trouble? He would have already fished him out of the palace. As for the chase that Duke Shunbei said, I don't know. They still dared to do such a thing. It seems that my warning was too light. After saying this, the white-clothed man fell silent. The black-clothed man silently stood behind him, like a shadow that would never leave. After the man in white left, Duke Shunbei tossed and turned. He felt that he shouldn't just wait for death. If he hadn't been punished, he could have handed in a memorial and entered the palace. Now the emperor said that he didn't want him to enter the palace and make the nobles unhappy, so he took away his right to enter the palace. Duke Shunbei didn't expect that one day, it would be so difficult to see his own son. He wrote a memorial and asked a familiar official to find a way to send it to the emperor. Because the memorial was about the nobles, the cabinet ministers didn't dare to act rashly and sent it to the palace. After Shang Junlin saw it, he told Shunyu. Duke Shunbei said that he has something to tell you about your mother. Does you want to see him? Shunyu thought about it. Since he was punished last time, Duke Shunbei hadn't bothered him for a long time. Since he said that he wanted to talk to him about his mother in the memorial, he should more or less tell him a little. I'll see him. Shunyu didn't care about the real purpose of Duke Shunbei. As long as he could get some information about his mother from Duke Shunbei, this meeting was not a loss. I'll go with you. If he wasn't there, who knew what Duke Shunbei would say to Shunyu? If he was there, at least Duke Shunbei would think about what to say and what not to say when he said something that would make Shunyu unhappy. Your Majesty, are you worried about me? I'm worried that Duke Shunbei will make you unhappy. Shunyu didn't refuse. He wanted to see Duke Shunbei to know more about his mother, not to listen to Duke Shunbei's nonsense. After the memorial was handed in, Duke Shunbei was very nervous. Finally, on the third day, the official he asked brought him good news. His Majesty said that Marquis should come to the palace tomorrow afternoon. He also said that Marquis wanted to see him for something. When the time comes, you can just talk about this one thing. Don't waste His Majesty's time with other unimportant things. After hearing this, Duke Shunbei felt bitter in his heart. The emperor was warning him not to make the nobles unhappy. When did he have to worry about this and that when talking to his own son? I understand. Shun Yu's people paid attention to every move of Duke Shunbei's mansion. Naturally, they also saw this scene. After the news was sent to Yuzhong Palace, Shun Yu's expression was cold. Is there anything unusual in Duke Shunbei's mansion these days? In the past, Shun Yu went to Duke Shunbei's mansion to ask about something that Duke Shunbei refused to say. Why did he suddenly want to say it this time? No matter how he looked at it, this matter was not normal. We didn't find anything unusual. If you want to say, before handing in the memorial, Duke Shunbei locked himself in the study for the whole afternoon. When he came out, he looked very bad. Mu Shi recalled the news that was handed in. Was there anyone else in the study at that time except him? No, our people didn't see anyone go in. It's strange that after that day, Duke Shunbei didn't go to the study for several days. In the blink of an eye, it was the day for Duke Shunbei to enter the palace. When Duke Shunbei came to Yuzhong Palace, the first thing he saw was the two people sitting side by side intimately. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Duke Shunbei bowed respectfully. After getting permission, he stood up. When he saw Shun Yu again, his mood was very complicated. This son of his had not been paid attention to since childhood and had quietly grown up in a place that he could not see. When he realized the mistakes he had made over the years and wanted to make up for them, he found that everything was too late. Duke Shunbei, you can just tell me about my mother. Shun Yu looked at Duke Shunbei and said lightly. Duke Shunbei came for this matter. He immediately said, when your mother insisted on marrying me, she told me that her family didn't agree with this marriage. I haven't seen her family until we got married. What is the origin of my mother? I don't know. She didn't tell me. She only said that she was in a deadlock with her family. If her whereabouts were discovered, she might be taken back. She was very reluctant to talk about her family, so I didn't want to force her. Before she died, she asked me to hide you well and not let her family find you. Otherwise, you might lose your life. Shun Yu and Shang Junlin looked at each other. They both thought of the assassination that year. Until now, they still hadn't found out who did it. Could it be related to the family that Duke Shunbei mentioned? Why didn't you say these words at that time? Shun Yu asked about what happened when he went to Duke Shunbei's mansion. For so many years, it has been safe and sound. I thought these things had passed and the people over there would not do it again. But I didn't expect that a person who claimed to be Brother Gui Jun appeared in the capital. He came to me and said that he wanted to take you back to the family. With the foreshadowing, when he heard this, he would most likely think that this brother who suddenly appeared had bad intentions. Why would he take him back? To kill him? Until Duke Shunbei left, Shang Junlin's aura was very low. He held Shun Yu in his arms and said in a low voice, I won't let anyone take you away. And I will never allow anyone to hurt you. Even if that person is your blood-related relative. We can't believe all of Duke Shunbei's words. Shun Yu patted Shang Junlin's back to comfort him. What he said must be beneficial to him. No matter what, we have to find him first. After we find him, we will naturally know what his purpose is. Shang Junlin held the young man in his arms tightly and calmed down the rolling killing intent in his heart. Since this person appeared in the capital, we will find him. Even if we have to dig 3 feet under the ground, we will find him. Perhaps, we don't need to find him. He has already appeared by himself. Shun Yu thought of Yu who inexplicably appeared in his clothes and the note that Mu Shi received. He may be in Yingxing Tower. This time, even if Shun Yu didn't want to, he had to go to Yingxing Tower. Your Majesty, as if he knew what Shun Yu was thinking, Shang Junlin interrupted him. If a Yu wants to see him, he can only see him at the place we choose. I will listen to your Majesty's arrangement. Now that there was someone he cared about, Shun Yu didn't want to be in danger because of him and the person he cared about. Chapter 215. I will arrange everything. If he really wants to find a Yu, he will come looking for you as long as he has the chance. Shang Junlin stroked Shun Yu's hair on his forehead. If he really is the person who gave me the jade pendant, I don't think he has any bad intentions. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left me a jade pendant, Shun Yu said in a low voice. After the jade pendant was found, Shang Junlin thoroughly investigated Yuzhong Palace. In the end, he found that the jade pendant was mixed in with clothes and was brought in from outside the palace. I know, but it's never wrong to be careful. Shen Yu nodded. This matter was handed over to Shang Junlin to handle. Shen Yu only needed to wait for the results. During this time, he didn't idle around. He asked the people of Yinghua to investigate the guests of Yingxing Tower. Young master, this is what we found during this period of time. Mu Shi presented a booklet. Shen Yu took it, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, he said, Mu Shi, do you think the person who appeared this time is beneficial to me or harmful to me? This servant is not sure. But based on this person's behavior, it doesn't seem like he will harm young master. Shen Yu also felt the same. But he also knew that some things couldn't be concluded too early. Yu is still thinking about this matter. Shang Junlin asked when he came back from the morning court and saw Shen Yu sitting on the swing with a thoughtful expression. Shang Junlin ordered people to build this swing. Later, it became Shen Yu's favorite place to stay. Shen Yu liked to stay here, so Shang Junlin would definitely accompany him. Over time, Shang Junlin set up a place next to the swing to make it convenient for Shang Junlin to review memorials. When the government affairs were busy, Shen Yu would sit on the swing and read a novel. Occasionally, he would look at the memorials. Shang Junlin would sit beside him and read the memorials that were presented to him. After delegating some matters to the cabinet, the number of memorials that needed to be personally reviewed by Shang Junlin had greatly decreased. At this time, Shang Junlin and Shen Yu would sit together on the swing. One of them would read memorials while the other would read novels. They did not interfere with each other and got along harmoniously. Shang Junlin walked over and sat beside Shen Yu. He reached out and scooped the young man into his arms. Is there any progress with His Majesty? I have already released the news that I will bring you back to the residence of Zhenbei in 2 days. At that time, my people will surround the residence of Zhenbei. If he really wants to see you and has no bad intentions towards you, he will definitely find a way to come to the residence of Zhenbei. This is his only chance. If they wanted to harm Shen Yu, they would have to think it through before making a move under the encirclement of so many soldiers. Why did His Majesty choose the residence of Zhenbei? Shen Yu leaned on the man's shoulder and slightly tilted her head. Her soft hair rubbed against the man's face, which was a little itchy. The news was sent by Zhenbei Hu. It's just right to choose the residence of Zhenbei. Shang Junlin raised his hand and brushed away a strand of hair beside Shen Yu's face. I don't know how Zhenbei Hu feels now. Zhenbei Hu's mood was very complicated. Shen Yu had been in the palace for more than a year. Although she had returned to the residence of Zhenbei several times, those times were different from this time. This time, the emperor announced it personally. On the one hand, it showed that he valued Shen Yu. On the other hand, it gave people a faint feeling that Zhenbei Hu was going to rise again. After the ministers heard the news, their mood was also very complicated. At that time, when Zhenbei Hu lost power, I said that this was only temporary. No matter what, he is your father. His Majesty loves the house and its crow. He will not be ruthless to the residents of Zhenbei Hu. Who would have thought that after so many days of indifference to Zhenbei Hu, His Majesty suddenly said that he would take your father back to visit his relatives? Those who haven't fallen out with Duke Zhenbei are probably secretly happy. His Majesty really wants to put Zhenbei Hu in an important position this time. For a time, the residence of Zhenbei Hu, which no one cared about before, welcomed all kinds of guests. After sending away another group of guests, Zhenbei Hu rubbed his eyebrows tiredly. Isn't this a good sign? Why are you still frowning? His confidant came out from the inner room and was puzzled when he saw Zhenbei Hu's appearance. Zhenbei Hu couldn't tell. He just felt that things would not be as optimistic as they appeared on the surface. You don't have to think too much. As long as His Majesty favors your father, the residents of Zhenbei Hu can enjoy a day of glory. His Majesty can't spoil your father while attacking the residents of Zhenbei Hu. What you said is reasonable. Since His Majesty wants to accompany your father back, the residents of Zhenbei Hu should prepare well. There can't be any impoliteness. Because of the visit, everyone in the residence of Zhenbei Hu was busy. Such a big movement couldn't be hidden. What's more, Zhenbei who didn't intend to hide it. Shen Qingran got the news from the servants of the residence of Zhenbei Hu. Since Shen Yu entered the palace, his treatment in the residence of Zhenbei Hu was getting worse day by day. Now it was even to the point where no one cared about him. He couldn't compare to the treatment of the young master of Zhenbei Hu's family. His utility was reduced, and the place where he lived was far worse than before. Shen Qingran sat under the eaves, and his heart was at a loss. When he tried every means to send Shen Yu into the palace, he didn't expect that the final result would be like this. The maids and manservants chatted about Shen Yu's return to the residence of Zhenbei Hu to visit the residence of Zhenbei Hu. Their faces were full of yearning, and they completely forgot that when Shen Yu was in the residence of Zhenbei Hu, they didn't even bother to look at him because he wasn't liked by the residents of Zhenbei Hu. In the middle of the night, Shen Qingran was awakened by a cold wind. He opened his eyes and found that the window was opened by someone. He didn't know where the servants were hiding, so he could only get up and close the window himself. Just as he was about to close the window, he saw a small paper bag left by someone by the window. He paused his action. He reached out and picked up the paper bag. He found a line of words under the paper bag. When he saw the content clearly, Shen Qingran's pupils shrank. He didn't know how long he stayed by the window. When he looked up again, he saw a person standing outside the window. He couldn't see the person's face clearly. He heard the person outside the window say, "Do you want to destroy Shen Yu? As long as you take the things inside with you and get close to Shen Yu, you can achieve your goal. This is your only chance. You have to think clearly. Who are you?" No one answered him. The wind at night was very cold. Shen Qingran looked down at the paper bag in his hand. The light in his eyes was flickering. Did he want to destroy Shen Yu? He thought. He thought about it all the time. Especially when the servant girls enviously talked about Shen Yu's treatment in the palace. He couldn't wait for that person to disappear forever. The hand holding the small paper bag kept clenching, and an idea gradually became clear in his mind. Everything that happened in the Count of Zhenbei's residence didn't affect Shen Yu. He leaned on the soft couch, supported his head with one hand, and said helplessly, "Just find a few sets of clothes." Mu Shi tidied up the clothes and said, "Gongzi, this time when you go to the Count of Zhenbei's residence, you must be glamorous. Let those people see that Gongzi is living a good life now." Since she knew that Shen Yu was going to visit his parents, Mu Shi had been busy preparing clothes, accessories, all kinds of things. She swore that after Shen Yu went to the Count of Zhenbei's residence, she would become the object of everyone's envy. Shen Yu didn't want to disturb her mood and put his attention back to the book in his hand. He found this book in the library pavilion. It recorded what happened during the reign of the late emperor. He thought that his mother was active in the capital during this period. Maybe he could find some useful information from the book. Unfortunately, he didn't find any useful clues after reading it several times. However, he saw some things about the late emperor and the late empress. When the late emperor had just ascended the throne, there was a period of time when he and the late empress were very loving. The two of them would go to watch polo games together. Later, something happened and the late empress suddenly fell out of favor. As a result, Shang Junlin's status also plummeted. The news that His Majesty personally accompanied His Highness to visit his parents flew everywhere as if it had grown wings. People everywhere in the capital talked about it. The man in white was in the Yingxing Tower, so he naturally received the news. His Majesty really treats His Highness well. This time, he actually personally accompanied His Highness to visit his parents. Even if it's an ordinary family, being accompanied by their husband to visit their parents shows that they are valued by their husband and his family. His Majesty is the Son of Heaven, but he is willing to do such a thing. It's really enviable. Recently, my wife and daughter always like to talk about this matter. When they talk about it, their tone is full of envy. I have already promised to accompany my wife to visit her parents' home. It turns out that I'm not the only one. I also agreed. The man in white sat by the window and silently listened to the discussion below. In these 2 days, what he heard the most was that His Majesty was going to accompany His Highness to visit his parents' home. It seems that if we want to see His Highness, We have to go to the residence of Count North. The man in white whispered. This morning, the residence of Count North was very busy. Count North personally waited at the door with people, waiting for the arrival of Shen Yu and Shang Junlin. The sun gradually rose. The housekeeper wiped the sweat on his forehead and didn't dare to move his eyes away from the outside for a moment. They're coming, they're coming. Quickly, Shen Yu and Shang Junlin were respectfully welcomed into the residence. When walking through the corridor, Shen Yu's footsteps paused. Shang Junlin held his hand and felt his strangeness. He asked, "What's wrong?" "I think I saw my younger brother." Although it was just a glance, Shen Yu could feel the other party's jealous gaze on him. Their voices were not loud. Count North was behind them, so he could faintly hear a little. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin were welcomed into the main hall. At this time, the male host of the residence should be the one to entertain the guests of his husband's family. The female host should go to the backyard with the other female members of the family. However, Shen Yu was also a man. There was no female host in the residence of Count North who was qualified to entertain him. Therefore, he stayed in the main hall. Count North also knew that Shang Junlin came because of Shen Yu. When Shang Junlin spoke, he would deliberately talk about Shen Yu. Shen Yu was not interested in staying and playing the role of a filial son with Count North. He said, "Your Majesty, I'll go out for a walk." "Go ahead. Take a few more people with you." Shen Yu came out with a group of palace servants and walked around aimlessly. "Aren't you tired after following me for so long?" Shen Yu walked to the lotus pond. He stopped and looked somewhere. Not long after, Shen Qingran came out from behind the tree. "How did you find out? It's hard to ignore your eyes. Why are you following me?" It was the same indifferent and superior look. Shen Qingran clenched his hands in his sleeves. Looking at Shen Yu, who was surrounded by so many people, he almost couldn't control his emotions. 1 step, 2 steps, the distance between the two was getting closer. Shen Yu frowned and faintly smelled a fragrance. Bang! Before Shen Qingran could get closer, a white figure suddenly appeared in front of Shen Yu and kicked Shen Qingran, who was unprepared, into the pond. "Don't let him get close. The things he carries will hurt you." A cold voice came. Shen Yu looked at the man in white in front of him and then looked at Shen Qingran, who fell into the lotus pond. Before he could speak, he heard Shang Junlin's voice. "What happened?" Chapter 216. Zhen Bei, who followed behind Shang Junlin. When he saw this scene, his heart turned cold. He knew that Shen Yu and Shen Qingran were not on good terms. Today, he specially ordered Shen Qingran not to come out if there was nothing important. Shen Qingran agreed verbally. In addition, during this period of time, Shen Qingran changed his style and did not make much trouble in the residence. Therefore, he relaxed his vigilance. He never expected that such a scene would be waiting for him. "Unfilial son, what did you do?" Shang Junlin did not care about what the people behind him thought. He went straight to Shen Yu and asked softly, "Are you okay?" Shen Yu shook his head. He was kicked down before he could do anything. Shang Junlin then diverted some of his attention to the man in white who was protecting Shen Yu. The man was dressed in white. He was tall and had a half-finger-wide white cloth covering his eyes. The lower half of his face was exposed and was very similar to Shen Yu's. "It's you." Before Shang Junlin could speak, Zhen Bei, whose shocked voice came. "Oh, Zhen Bei, who knows him?" This. Zhen Bei, who was at a loss. What should he say? If he told the truth, wouldn't it mean that he had lied in front of the emperor? But if he did not tell the truth, this man would definitely not let him go since he had already appeared here. Why did Zhen Bei who stop talking? The man in white asked. His voice was like ice, cold and with a trace of coldness. Shen Qingran was still soaking in the water. He knew that his plan would not succeed. It was so close. It was all because of this man who suddenly appeared. Who was he? The water was not cold after being exposed to the sun for a long time. However, he was not good at swimming and would still feel very uncomfortable after staying in the water for a long time. Why was Shen Yu so lucky? He could succeed in everything he did. Everyone was protecting him. Even this young man in white who suddenly appeared stood on his side without saying anything. How could he not be better than Shen Yu? Shen Qingran was not reconciled. The jealousy in his heart was like wild grass, spreading layer by layer. He didn't even notice how he was looking at Shen Yu. Sensing his gaze, Shen Yu looked back. "Your Majesty, let's deal with Shen Qingran first," Shen Yu said, breaking the silent deadlock. The bodyguards received the order and dragged Shen Qingran out of the water. Shen Qingran could not resist at all. He was forced to kneel on the ground. "Shen Qingran, what do you want to do to me?" Shen Yu looked down at the person kneeling on the ground. Shen Qingran gritted his teeth and looked back. He was in such a sorry state. Shen Yu was dressed luxuriously and was well protected in the middle of the crowd. As for him, his clothes were soaked and his wet hair was stuck together. He was in an indescribable sorry state. "I just want to talk to brother." Shen Qingran looked down, looking a little pitiful. "If you just want to talk to me, you don't have to bring anything that can harm me." Shen Yu's voice was cold. "Brother, why do you believe the words of an unknown person? I don't have anything on me. If you don't believe me, you can search me yourself. Don't go over. This person is full of lies. If you go over, he will get what he wants." The man in white said. Of course, Shen Yu would not go over. It was not that he believed the man in white so easily, but it was not normal for Shen Qingran to come to him for no reason. His relationship with Shen Qingran was not at the level of catching up. Also, Shen Qingran's gaze was crazy when he looked at him. He wanted to get rid of him quickly. Under such circumstances, Shen Yu would not go near him no matter what. There was no need to go near him. "Go and search him," Shang Junlin ordered coldly. Shang Junlin would not take Shen Yu's matter lightly, no matter how small it was. He still remembered that when Shen Yu had a relapse in Kangqi Mountain, someone bumped into Shen Yu. A short touch could induce Shen Yu's relapse. It was very abnormal for Shen Qingran to go near Shen Yu under such circumstances. The imperial bodyguard was very rough. After searching for a while, he found a small pouch in Shen Qingran's arms. "It's just a pouch for powder," Shen Qingran said in a low voice. The imperial bodyguard was about to present the pouch when he was stopped by the man in white. "Don't let this thing go near your Gui Jun." The imperial bodyguard who was holding the pouch looked at Shang Junlin questioningly. "You stand further away. Take Shen Qingran away and interrogate him." Shang Junlin made the decision almost without thinking. His last hope was dashed. Shen Qingran's face turned ferocious for a moment. He watched as Shen Yu was protected in the arms of the handsome emperor like a pearl. Jealousy was like a poisonous snake with long fangs, madly gnawing at his heart. The imperial bodyguard was very strong and did not give him a chance to struggle at all. He was dragged away. Shen Qingran's matter was temporarily solved. The next thing was the sudden appearance of the man in white. Seeing Shen Qingran being taken away, Sir Zhenbei found his voice in panic. "Your Majesty, is there any misunderstanding in this matter?" He did not want to plead for Shen Qingran, but once this matter was confirmed, the crime of murdering the Gui Jun would fall on Sir Zhenbei's residence. Judging from how much Shang Junlin cared about Shen Yu, the emperor's anger was far from what they could bear. "Sir Zhenbei wants to plead for Shen Qingran?" Shen Yu turned back from Shang Junlin's arms and looked at Sir Zhenbei emotionlessly. "The interrogation results are not out yet, and the matter has not been concluded yet. Sir Zhenbei, why are you in such a hurry to plead for Shen Qingran?" His voice was cold, and it was not difficult to hear the sarcasm in it. I just... Sir Zhenbei could not say what he was just saying. "If you want to cover up for him, you can accompany Shen Qingran." "Guards, I don't dare." "Your Majesty, please forgive me." Sir Zhenbei directly knelt down. "May I know your identity?" Shang Junlin no longer cared about Sir Zhenbei and turned to look at the man in white in front of him. The imperial bodyguards surrounded him vigilantly. As long as he made a slight mistake, he would be besieged. The man did not seem to feel the austere atmosphere and turned to face them. "I have been waiting for Shen Yu's arrival at the Yingxing Tower. I couldn't wait for him, so I had to find him myself." "You sent the jade and the note?" Shen Yu asked. "Yes," the man in white admitted bluntly. I was afraid that you didn't see it, so I specially asked someone to send a message to your personal maid. That day in the suburbs of the capital, you clearly came. Why didn't you show up? The guards around you are too strict. If it wasn't for the fact that I had no other choice, why would I use such a complicated method to see you? Sir Junbei was taken away, and the three of them continued to talk in another place. Both sides tacitly skipped the means used to lure the other out. Shun Yu and Shang Junlin sat together. The man in white sat opposite them. Behind him stood a man in black who was dressed differently from the people of Dahuan. He followed behind the man in white like a shadow. This is my. The man in white paused for a moment. In the words of Dahuan, he is my secret guard. You don't have to care about him. Why are you looking for me? Shun Yu held the teacup and asked. Because you are my younger brother. I have been looking for you and your mother for a long time. I thought that it would be easy to meet you after I found you, but I didn't expect it to be the most difficult. Shang Junlin had been observing the man opposite him. Apart from other things, the man in white who suddenly appeared looked very similar to Shun Yu. It was the kind of resemblance that could be seen at a glance. However, compared to Shun Yu, his temperament was colder and his facial features were sharper. It was very believable that the two of them were related by blood. You say you are, but you have to prove it. I am not a 3-year-old child. I am not that easy to fool. Shun Yu laughed. I think this face is the best proof. The man in white pointed at his chin. I don't deny that you look very similar to me. Don't be so guarded against your relatives. I am not your father. I will not hurt you. If you want proof, the person your mother left for you should be able to prove it. Shun Yu did not want to dwell on this unsolvable problem. He changed the topic and asked, Who are you? You said that the thing in Shen Qingran's hand will hurt me. Why? I will answer your first question first. I am your brother. My name is Ji Wuwang. The thing in Shen Qingran's hand is a secret medicine developed by the Ji family. It is useless for ordinary people. It is only effective for some members of the Ji family. After being poisoned by this medicine, one will fall into a deep sleep. Their vitality will be slowly depleted in their sleep until they die. Ji Wuwang's voice was filled with obvious emotional fluctuations. Some people. Why is a you in this group? Shang Junlin immediately grasped the key point. His health is not good, so he is easily affected. This answer, whether it was Shen Yu or Shang Junlin, did not think it was the truth. I want to know about my mother. Your mother left the family very early. No one knows where she went. At that time, I was not in charge of the family. Those people wanted to catch your mother. They sent a lot of people, but in the end, they were all defeated. Later, they seemed to have given up and did not make any moves for a long time. Then how did you find me? I found a way to pry open their mouths. According to the information they provided, I pieced together a clue and came to Da Huan. Ji Wuwang played it down, but the truth was far from that. After he came to power, he almost massacred the entire family. Of course, the method he used to pry open their mouths was not very gentle. In a short conversation, Shun Yu did not get much useful information. However, now that there was a person who claimed to be his brother, it was better than having no clue. After such a thing happened, there was no need to continue staying in Junbei-hu's residence. Before the sky turned dark, Shang Junlin took Shun Yu back to the palace. Shen Qingran was also taken away. Junbei, who was trembling with fear and did not dare to say a word. So, my mother's surname should be Ji, not Shen. Does Junbei-hu know about this? Shun Yu leaned against the wall of the carriage and recalled Ji Wuwang's words. Probably not. We have been investigating for so long, but we have not found any useful information. It can be seen how deep the secret is. In this life, Ji Wuwang had found him. In his previous life, Ji Wuwang had never appeared in his memories. Was this matter also affected by his rebirth? And the medicine in Shen Qingran's hands, who gave it to him? Mysteries came one after another. Shun Yu tried to figure out a clue, but he only led himself deeper and deeper. Shun Yu, Your Majesty, how much do you think Ji Wuwang's words are trustworthy? Shang Junlin, no matter how much, since he has appeared, We can follow him to investigate. Shun Yu, he seems to have some understanding of my body's condition, but I don't know why he is not willing to say it. Master, why don't you tell little Gongzi everything? After returning to the Yingxing Tower, the black-robed man who had been following Ji Wuwang asked. Because he does not fully trust me. Moreover, I have not found that thing. Even if I told him, it would only add to his troubles. Chapter 217. Shun Yu was sick. He had a high fever after returning from the residence of Northern Marquis. He seemed to have fallen into some kind of terrible nightmare. The young man was lying on the bed with his brows tightly knitted. Sweat slid down his forehead and his face was flushed. Shang Junlin sat by the bed, holding his hand and looking at him without blinking. The man's face was calm, and only his tightly pursed lips revealed some clues. Shang Junlin gently stroked the young man's messy hair. His eyes were full of worry. Where is the imperial physician? He tried his best to suppress the violence in his voice. I've already sent someone to invite him. Eunuch Meng stood aside, not daring to breathe. The other servants kneeled on the ground. No one dared to make a sound at this time. Dead silence spread in the air. The red candles were high, but the hall was cold. Shang Junlin was still wearing his pajamas. He found something wrong in the middle of the night. The person in his arms was getting warmer and warmer. When Shang Junlin woke up, he found that Shun Yu couldn't wake up and panicked. He wasn't afraid when he was bullied in the harem for the first time. He wasn't afraid when he was stained with the enemy's blood for the first time. He wasn't afraid when he was trapped by the enemy for the first time and narrowly escaped death, but at this moment, he was afraid. His body couldn't help but tremble. He thought of what Ji Wuwang said during the day. He didn't know if Shun Yu's illness was related to what happened during the day. He didn't know what he should do if it was related. In the early summer weather, he felt a piercing chill. He didn't know how long he stayed in this position, but he heard Eunuch Meng's voice. Your Majesty, the imperial physician is here. Because imperial physician Ji Yu wasn't here, Shang Junlin called all the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital. Everyone didn't know what was going on, but the servants who invited them looked anxious. Their hearts sank. Especially when they walked into Yuzhang Palace and felt the low pressure around them. They faintly felt that this time it wasn't so simple. Why wasn't imperial physician Ji Yu here at this time? Under the heavy bed curtains, a white, almost transparent hand stretched out. Come and take a look at him. A senior imperial physician stepped forward and took the pulse of the owner of the arm. The pulse was very strange. The imperial physician gradually frowned. He let go of his hand and said, I need to take a look at your condition. Shang Junlin was silent for a while. Then he wrapped Shun Yu in the quilt and carried her out. Several other imperial physicians also came over to check Shun Yu's pulse. After the imperial physician finished his examination, his face turned serious. Can you tell me what you have been in contact with in the past 2 days? Meng Chang, go and get it. What Shang Junlin said was the purse that was found on Shen Qingran's body. It was placed in a place where Shun Yu would not come into contact with it. No, bring the imperial physician over. Thinking of Ji Wuwang's words, Shang Junlin changed his mind. The imperial physicians were taken out. Shang Junlin gently placed Shun Yu back on the bed. After all this trouble, Shun Yu still showed no signs of waking up. Shang Junlin's heart sank. Less than an hour later, the imperial physicians who had finished packing up were brought back. Is your condition related to that thing? Shang Junlin asked in a low voice. Replying to your Majesty, I can't determine if there is a definite connection between the two. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the hall became even colder. You don't know? His words were very calm, but it made the people who heard it tremble with fear. Shang Junlin looked at the other imperial physicians. What about you? Forgive us for not being skilled enough. In an instant, the imperial physicians knelt on the ground. Shang Junlin lowered his eyes. If you can't cure him, your Majesty, Eunuch Meng gathered his courage and said, why don't you ask young Master Ji? Maybe he knows something. Send someone to invite him. Shang Junlin closed his eyes to restrain his murderous intent. As for you, if you can't wake him up, you will stay in the palace for a day. As you wish. Take them to settle down. Shang Junlin waved his hand. Eunuch Meng led the imperial physicians out of the bedchamber. Only then did they dare to breathe heavily. If Eunuch Meng hadn't interrupted them, they would have suspected that His Majesty was going to say, "If you can't cure him, you will be buried with him." Thank you, Eunuch Meng, for helping us out. The leading imperial physician cupped his hands to Eunuch Meng. His Majesty is just too worried about your prince's health. I hope you won't take it to heart and try your best to treat him. Eunuch Meng's attitude was gentle. We understand. We will find a way to cure him. After Eunuch Meng led the imperial physicians away, he returned to Shang Junlin's side to serve him. At this time, even if he wanted to persuade him, he couldn't. He had seen His Majesty and His Majesty get to where they are today. He clearly knew how deep His Majesty's love for His Majesty was. If anything happened to His Majesty would definitely. Now, he could only hope that the cause of the illness could be found soon so that His Majesty could wake up soon. Time passed slowly. Eunuch Meng looked at the sky and walked to the bedside. Your Majesty, today's morning court. There will be no court today. A slightly tired voice came from the tent. Eunuch Meng bowed his head respectfully. I understand. The ministers were all stunned when they were suddenly informed that the morning court was cancelled. Shang Junlin had been on the throne for so many years and had never skipped court without a reason. It was the first time that he cancelled the morning court without saying anything. Eunuch Meng, why did you suddenly cancel the morning court today? A minister walked to Eunuch Meng and asked. I can't interfere with His Majesty's decision. No matter how the ministers tried to probe, Eunuch Meng's answer was watertight. Unable to get an answer, the ministers could only leave. Eunuch Meng sighed as he looked at the rising sun on the horizon. When he returned to the bedchamber, Ji Wuwang was already there. He took out a jade bottle and poured out a pill. Feed it to him. What is this? Shang Junlin changed into the clothes he wore during the day. Because he was going to meet Ji Wuwang, he also changed into casual clothes for Shen Yu. It's a pill that can wake him up. Ji Wuwang said concisely. He was still dressed in plain white. Although his eyes were covered with a white cloth, it didn't affect his movements. Shang Junlin looked at him deeply. This is a secret medicine of the clan. It can temporarily suppress the thing in Little Yu's body. I brought it out as a precaution, but I didn't expect it to come in handy. I hope you didn't lie to me. Otherwise, if anything happens to a Yu, I won't let you and your clan off. Shang Junlin took the pill and fed it to Shen Yu. Shen Yu's illness came in a strange way. The imperial physicians were also helpless. Other than believing in this person who suddenly appeared and claimed to be Shen Yu's older brother, Shang Junlin had no other choice. Is it because of what happened yesterday? Shang Junlin hugged the sleeping youth. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't wake him up, anyone would think that the youth was sleeping. Yes. Ji Wuwang confirmed his thoughts. I didn't expect that I was one step too late and they succeeded. You hid a lot of things from us. Shang Junlin calmly pointed out. What's going on with the Yu's body? Why is he the only one affected? I said that the pill is only effective on a portion of the Ji family. This portion refers to the Ji family members who have been restrained. A Yu grew up in the capital. I don't believe that the Ji family can reach so far. In order to find clues about Shen Yu's mother, Shang Junlin asked the hidden dragon guards to investigate carefully. From the beginning to the end, the Ji family didn't appear around Shen Yu. If Ji Wuwang didn't jump out himself, they wouldn't have known about the Ji family's existence. Indeed, it can't be because the one who has been restrained is Little Yu's mother. Ji Wuwang's tone became colder. What do you mean by restrained? A Yu's weak body isn't innate. You can think of Jie Yin as a kind of medicine. Xiao Yu's weak body is related to it, but it's not necessarily related. It's because of Jie Yin that Xiao Yu has been able to live until now. Since it had already happened, Ji Wuwang didn't mind telling Shang Junlin more. If restrained was harmless, the Ji family wouldn't have avoided it. When Shen Qingran's medicine and restrained take effect, the person will fall into a deep sleep. Little Yu isn't affected too much and will wake up soon. The medicine I brought can last for 4 months at most. You mean that a Yu will fall into a deep sleep after 4 months? Shang Junlin hugged Shen Yu's arm tightly. Ji Wuwang, therefore, we have to find a way to remove restraint within 4 months. Shang Junlin, tell me what you want. As long as a Yu is well, I will satisfy you. Ji Wuwang, I came here for this matter. Little Yu is my younger brother, so I will naturally save him. Also, if we want to remove restraint completely, we have to return to the family. Shang Junlin, you want to take a Yu away? Ji Wuwang, he is a member of the Ji family. Naturally, he should return to the family. Shang Junlin, I have never heard of the Ji family. Ji Wuwang, the Ji family has been isolated from the world for a long time. If we look back a few hundred years, we might be able to find some traces of the Ji family outside. Shang Junlin, I won't let you take a Yu away. Ji Wuwang, then you want to watch him fall into a deep sleep after 4 months. Shang Junlin, is a Yu's mother's death also related to restraint? Ji Wuwang, perhaps, if a person is restrained by restraint and leaves the family, he will grow weaker after reaching adulthood. It's funny that the family treats it as a sacred object and doesn't know that they are being controlled. Shang Junlin looked down at the young man in his arms. When will a Yu wake up? Within 4 hours. During this time, young Master Ji should stay in the palace. Since you are a Yu's elder brother, as a Yu's husband, you should take care of his family. Whether it was the soft method or the hard method, it was impossible for Shang Junlin to let him leave before Shen Yu woke up. After ordering eunuch Meng to take Ji Wuwang away, Shang Junlin called for the leader of the hidden dragon guards and ordered him to investigate the Ji family. Shen Yu had a very long dream. In the dream, he was immersed in a cloud that he could not see clearly. He floated with the wind and did not know who he was or what he should do. He could not see his surroundings clearly and could not hear the sounds of the outside world. It was as if someone was constantly talking beside his ear. It was noisy and he could not hear clearly. Suddenly, the fog surrounding him dispersed. Shen Yu felt that he was in a warm embrace. His hand was held by someone and placed on the side of his mouth to kiss. 4 hours are almost up. Why hasn't a Yu woken up yet? A slightly hoarse voice entered his ears. Shen Yu was confused. Wake up. Was he asleep now? Shang Junlin noticed his eyelashes fluttering almost at the same time. He stared unblinkingly at the young man in his arms and watched him slowly open his eyes. Chapter 218. A Yu is finally awake. Shang Junlin lowered his head and rubbed the young man's cheek. Did I sleep for a long time? Shen Yu tilted his head and looked at the window. Outside the window, the sun was shining brightly. Shen Yu was stunned. Is it already afternoon? Shang Junlin helped Shen Yu to sit up. A Yu slept for a long time. Don't do this again. After Shen Yu woke up, the palace servants serving in the hall breathed a sigh of relief. Mu Shi's heart also fell to the ground. Ask the imperial physician to come over and check on a Yu. Shang Junlin ordered. Yes, this slave will go now. Eunuch Meng accepted the order and left. The atmosphere in the hall gradually returned to normal. Shen Yu looked at Shang Junlin. The man had dark circles under his eyes. He reached out and touched them. Your Majesty, did you not sleep well last night? A Yu had a fever last night. I couldn't wake him up. Shang Junlin touched the young man's forehead. Fortunately, he woke up now. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? He didn't mention that he almost didn't sleep last night because of Shen Yu's matter. As Shen Yu woke up, his fever was also relieved. He didn't feel anything except that his body was a little sore. Shen Yu shook his head. Let's wait for the imperial physician. Mu Shi brought in clean water. Shang Junlin wiped Shen Yu's face and hands. He lowered his head and wiped very seriously. After wiping, the palace servants brought in hot porridge. Shang Junlin took the bowl and fed Shen Yu spoonful by spoonful. Shen Yu felt that Shang Junlin was treating him like a fragile porcelain doll. He pushed the man's arm. Your Majesty, let me down. Shang Junlin had been holding him in his arms since he woke up. Shen Yu didn't know how long Shang Junlin had been holding him before he woke up. Don't move. Shang Junlin took a handkerchief and carefully wiped Shen Yu's mouth. After finishing the porridge, Eunuch Meng brought the imperial physician in. Along with him was a white-robed Ji Wuwang. Why was Ji Wuwang in the palace? Shen Yu blinked in confusion. The imperial physician had already stepped forward. Because imperial physician Ji Yu went to the neighboring county, the imperial physician who came to treat Shen Yu was not familiar with him. Shen Yu stretched out his hand and let the imperial physician take his pulse. After taking his pulse, the imperial physician retracted his hand. Your Highness's body is fine. You're just a little weak. Shang Junlin looked at the other imperial physicians without saying a word. After the first imperial physician left, several other imperial physicians also came forward to take Shen Yu's pulse. The conclusion they got was the same as the first imperial physician. Shang Junlin sent them away and said, "You were unconscious last night because you were affected by the medicine in Shen Qingran's hands. Ji Wuwang will be in the palace. I sent someone to invite him in. I didn't come into contact with the medicine, right?" Shen Yu thought that he wasn't affected because nothing happened at first. "I made a mistake in my judgment. I shouldn't have let him get close to you," Ji Wuwang said. Ji Wuwang repeated what Shang Junlin said to Shen Yu. After Shen Yu heard it, he fell silent. He knew that his mother's origin wasn't that simple, but he didn't expect that it would involve the Ji family and the Jie Yin in his body. In his previous life, until his death, he didn't know that he had this thing on him. "You mean, I have to go to the Ji family's territory?" Shen Yu felt the pressure on his waist increase because of his words. Helpless, he asked, "Your Majesty refused, right?" "Yes, Your Majesty doesn't allow me to bring you with me. It will take at least half a month from Da Huan's capital to the Ji family's territory. You still have time to consider your choice." Shen Yu wasn't surprised that Shang Junlin didn't agree. Ji Wuwang's origin was a mystery. Everything he said was just his side of the story. No one knew how much of his words were true or false. Under such circumstances, how could Shang Junlin be at ease to hand Shen Yu over? "I have already sent the hidden dragon guards to investigate the Ji family. If what Ji Wuwang said is true, I will accompany you to the Ji family's territory," Shang Junlin said after Ji Wuwang left. This was a decision he made after thinking for a long time. No matter what, he couldn't let Shen Yu go to the Ji family's territory alone. "Your Majesty is the Emperor of Da Huan. How can you leave for me? In my heart, a Yu is more important than anything else." For the entire day, Shang Junlin didn't leave Shen Yu's side at all. If it wasn't for Shen Yu's strong protest, he would have hugged Shen Yu in his arms no matter what he did. After getting Shen Yu's protest, Shang Junlin let Shen Yu go alone. However, no matter where Shen Yu went, his gaze would follow him closely. Although Shang Junlin didn't say it, Shen Yu could only think that Shang Junlin might have been frightened this time. He consciously stayed with Shang Junlin. When Shang Junlin was reading the memorial, he would take a book and lean on him, indulging Shang Junlin's possessiveness. For several days, Shang Junlin was in this state. One day, Shen Yu woke up a little early. He found that Shang Junlin was half lying on the bed, looking at him without blinking. The room was very dark. Shen Yu couldn't tell the time. He propped himself up and was about to get up, but was stopped by Shang Junlin. "It's still early. You should sleep for a while." "What time is it now?" Shang Junlin said the time. It was indeed very early. Usually, Shen Yu would still be sleeping at this time. He lay back down and planned to sleep for a while. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong. Shen Yu moved closer to Shang Junlin. "Why is Your Majesty still in Yuzhong Palace at this time? The morning court ended so soon." Shang Junlin said indifferently. He pulled Shen Yu back into his arms and patted his back. "Go to sleep." Shang Junlin's arms were very warm. His gentle movements also had a hypnotic effect. Shen Yu faintly felt that something was wrong. Before he could think about it, his consciousness gradually slipped into sleep. It was already 2 hours later when he was completely awake. Shang Junlin was not there, so Mushi helped him dress. After he woke up, his mind gradually became clear. Shen Yu narrowed his eyes and said unexpectedly, "How long has Your Majesty not been to the morning court?" Since the day young master fell ill, he hasn't been to the morning court. Moo, she answered subconsciously. After answering, her face changed slightly. You don't have to hide it for him. Since I asked, it must be something. Shun Yu deliberately asked because he knew that Shang Junlin might have ordered this matter to be sealed. If he directly asked, "Did your majesty not go to the morning court?" he probably wouldn't get the real answer. After tidying up, Shun Yu walked out of the room. The Prime Minister came today and your majesty met him next door. Moo, she took the initiative to explain. Your majesty didn't go to the morning court for a few days. What was the reaction of the court? Because your majesty said that you were not feeling well these days, so you won't go to the morning court for the time being. All the affairs of the court are controlled by the cabinet, so everything is calm for the time being. Shun Yu knew that Shang Junlin would have his own arrangements, but he still didn't want Shang Junlin to not go to the morning court for a long time because of him. So when Shang Junlin came back, the first thing he did was to hug Shun Yu into his arms, but he was rejected. Shun Yu pressed against his chest and said directly, "Your Majesty, why didn't you go to the morning court?" Shun Yu was smart. Shang Junlin didn't expect to keep Shun Yu in the dark all the time, so he didn't panic when he was exposed. He grabbed Shun Yu's hand and said, "I'm worried about you. The Prime Minister and Fang Jun will take care of the affairs of the court. Nothing will happen if you leave me for a day or two. I'm fine now. The imperial physician also said that my body is fine. Your Majesty, please don't delay the affairs of the court because of me." The ministers of the court had many opinions about Shang Junlin not going to the morning court for a few days. It's already the 5th day. Is your Majesty still not going to the morning court? Is your Majesty really sick? Is his illness serious? The ministers were worried. The health of a country's emperor couldn't be trifled with. Moreover, Shang Junlin didn't have any children and didn't appoint an heir. If something really happened, the court would be in chaos. Why don't we find a time to go to the palace and visit him? 5 days ago, many imperial physicians were summoned to the palace overnight. They haven't left the palace yet. Can anyone give us an accurate answer? How is your Majesty's health? On the first day, when His Majesty suddenly announced that he wouldn't be going to the morning court, although the ministers privately discussed the reason, they didn't panic. Until the second day, the third day, didn't the Prime Minister and Fang Daren receive the summons? Why don't we go and ask them? At least, we have to make sure that your Majesty is fine. After making up their minds, they visited the Prime Minister and Fang Jun. The Prime Minister and Fang Jun had seen the Emperor before, so they naturally knew that Shang Junlin was fine. They comforted the officials who came to inquire. Both the Prime Minister and Fang Daren said that he's fine. He should be fine, right? If he's fine, why doesn't your Majesty go to the morning court? Fortunately, they didn't have to worry for long. Shang Junlin resumed the morning court. Looking at the Emperor sitting on the dragon throne, who didn't change much from before, the ministers heaved a sigh of relief. Shang Junlin didn't explain why he didn't go to the morning court. The ministers also tacitly moved on from this matter. Lin County. With the addition of Imperial Physician Gu, the epidemic was effectively alleviated. Many people who were infected with the epidemic recovered after treatment. Because Lin County only allowed people to enter and not leave, outsiders didn't know the specific situation inside. Deliberately, the rumors outside became more and more outrageous. Gu Huai didn't enter Lin County. He brought people to investigate for a few days and found a few suspicious people. "Little Gu, come over here and take a look," Imperial Physician Wu said. Imperial Physician Gu put down the things at hand and walked over. "Look, his condition is starting to improve." The person in front of Imperial Physician Wu was one of the first infected people. He was also one of the people who volunteered to be a test subject. His condition was more serious than the others. After receiving treatment from Imperial Physician Gu and Imperial Physician Wu, his condition gradually improved. In this place, the same situation happened every day. The fire of hope would never be extinguished. Imperial Physician Wu more or less guessed some of the secrets, but he couldn't deny that this epidemic was the smoothest one he had ever experienced. The news of Lin County was sent back to the capital. There was a way to deal with it, and the epidemic was solved smoothly. In the end, Shen Yu's body had been affected and was much weaker than before. He also slept more than before. At first, Shang Junlin was very worried, but after the imperial physician said that it was normal, he felt a little relieved. I plan to ask imperial physician Ji Yu to come back early, Shang Junlin said as he put down the memorial from Lin County. Originally, imperial physician Ji Yu would stay in Lin County until this matter was completely solved. However, Shen Yu's body was in a bad condition, and Shang Junlin couldn't wait that long. Your Majesty, have you found any clues about the Ji family? Shen Yu had been flipping through the books in the library these days. Unexpectedly, he really found a book that recorded the Ji family's matters. He carried the book to the imperial study. Your Majesty, what did I find? I found a little. Part of what Ji Wuwang said was true. However, there are still no clues about the Jie Yin. Shang Junlin put down his pen. You also found out about the Ji family? Chapter 219. I accidentally saw some records about the Ji family. In Chen Yu's hand was a book about the records of one of the great Huan dynasty's emperors. When he first entered the palace, Chen Yu often read such books as storybooks. The book in his hand was placed in a more remote location, so it wasn't found at that time. This time, it was found by Shen Yu. Shen Yu carried the book and walked to Shang Junlin's side and put the book on the imperial desk. Shen Yu put a bookmark in the place where the records of the Ji family were recorded. The bookmark was made by Shen Yu when he was idle, and it had a faint fragrance. The bookmark was taken away, and Shen Yu pointed to a place. Your Majesty, look. The book recorded the life of an emperor of the Great Huan dynasty. This emperor was different from the other emperors of the Great Huan dynasty. Every year after he was registered, he would spend a lot of time wandering outside the palace. It could be said that he had traveled all over the Great Huan dynasty. Other than the Great Huan dynasty, he had also visited many remote places. One of them was located deep in the mountains, where there were few people. This emperor fell into the mountains while chasing prey and found that there was a small country isolated from the rest of the world. The population of this country was not large, and it had a very strange custom. The ruler was the Ji family. This emperor only lived there for 3 days before he was sent out. When he left behind the things he had on him and told the people who saved him that if they were interested, they could come to Da Huan as a guest. After the emperor left, he would think of this place from time to time. Later, he brought people to the deep mountains and wanted to enter again, but he did not succeed. Of course, in his whole life, he did not wait for the people with the token to come to Da Huan to find him. The book only recorded half a page of this matter, so Shang Junlin finished reading it quickly. If the small country mentioned in the book is the Ji family, then your mother leaving the Ji family and coming to Da Huan, could it be related to this matter? Shang Junlin lowered his head and thought. It's better to ask Ji Wuwang directly. Shen Yu had been wondering before. If his mother was from the Ji family, why did she have to come to Da Huan? As a hereditary marquis, why did Zhen Bei who marry a woman of unknown origin as his legal wife? What if there was someone from the royal family behind this woman? Then, no matter what her real background was, it was not strange that Duke Zhenbei would take her as his wife. Shang Junlin still had official business to attend to, so Shen Yu accompanied him for a while in the imperial study. After they were done, the two of them returned to Yuzhang Palace. The palace servant received the order to invite Ji Wuwang. When Shen Yu and Shang Junlin arrived at Yuzhang Palace, Ji Wuwang was already there. During this period of time, both sides had tried many times. Shen Yu could feel that Ji Wuwang was holding back. Whenever he talked about the key points, he would stop at a certain point and never delve too deeply. Little Yu, why did you call Big Brother here? Ji Wuwang asked when he saw the two of them. Other things aside, Ji Wuwang was very proactive when it came to recognizing his relatives. In just a few days, everyone in the palace knew that this handsome young master with a disease in his eyes was the emperor's elder brother. Because the two of them looked so similar, almost no one doubted the authenticity of his words. We found that an emperor of the Great Huan dynasty had once visited your clan's land. He also drew a map. My mother leaving the clan's land to come to the Great Huan dynasty, is it related to this matter? Shen Yu said while observing Ji Wuwang's expression, not missing a moment of change. How should I say this matter? It can be said that it is related. After the Ji family went into seclusion, they almost cut off all contact with the outside world until a man who claimed to be the Great Huan dynasty's emperor accidentally broke in. He told the Ji family about the outside world and left some personal belongings in the clan. He said that if they encountered any difficulties, they could go to the Great Huan dynasty to find him. Ji Wuwang's words matched what was recorded in the book. This proved that the Ji family Ji Wuwang was the same family that the Great Huan dynasty's emperor met. You directly admitted it. Aren't you afraid that we will bring people directly to the Ji family's land? Shen Yu raised an eyebrow. You won't be able to enter. Ji Wuwang's lips curved into a perfect arc. That ancestor of the Great Huan dynasty also brought people to search, right? He didn't find anything, right? Without someone to lead the way, it's impossible for outsiders to enter the clan's land. You're making me more curious. What kind of existence is the Ji family? Little you, if you're interested, follow me back and you'll know. Since the Shang family's ancestor can enter, others should be able to as well, right? Shen Yu stroked his chin and asked. Who do you want to bring? You don't have to bring people to serve you. The clan will arrange it. You are my younger brother. When you reach the clan's land, you will be treated as you should. Who said I want to bring people to serve me? What I want to ask is, can I bring His Majesty along? When Shen Yu's voice fell, not only Ji Wuwang, but even Shang Junlin was stunned. During this period of time, they had deliberately avoided this topic because they knew that this was a problem that could not be solved for the time being. The problem with Shen Yu's body could not be ignored. Regardless of whether Ji Wuwang's words were true or false, Shang Junlin would not use Shen Yu as a stake. The only way was to take the initiative and firmly control the situation in his own hands. The most appropriate way Shang Junlin could think of was to control the Ji family so that they would not dare to do anything unnecessary. No, you can't bring him. Ji Wuwang's first reaction was to refuse. Why not? Actually, you should be able to feel that the trust between us is very low. Since young, I have always thought that I did not have a maternal family. But now, someone suddenly appeared and told me that he is an elder brother from my maternal family. If it were you, how much would you believe? Shen Yu brought up this matter for the first time. I know you don't believe me. When you return to the family with me, you will naturally understand everything. You see, this is a problem that cannot be solved. Because I don't believe you, I will not easily return to the family with you. If I don't return to the family, I will not believe you. After going around in a circle, we are back to square one. Why don't you think of a way to gain my trust first? Won't this problem be easily solved? Shen Yu threw all the problems to Ji Wuwang to solve. He and Shang Junlin had too few clues in their hands. It was undoubtedly very difficult to verify this matter. Ji Wuwang was different. If he could find him, he must have something to prove his words. You can think clearly before coming to find me. Ji Wuwang left with a look of deep thought. I don't want a complicated background at all. Shen Yu fell on Shang Junlin's body and sighed. A complicated background meant endless trouble. Just by looking at it from a corner, Shen Yu could feel that the Ji family's waters were very deep. He did not want to get involved in this muddy water at all. Why did you say that you want me to accompany you? Shang Junlin adjusted Shen Yu's position so that he could lie down more comfortably. Your Majesty does not want to accompany me? Shen Yu turned over so that he was face to face with Shang Junlin. He supported himself on the man's chest and looked into his dark eyes. Wherever a you goes, I am willing to accompany you. The reason is very simple. It is because I do not want to be separated from your Majesty. Shen Yu lowered his head and leaned close to the man's chest. He listened to the man's steady heartbeat and the messy thoughts in his mind gradually calmed down. He thought that he had changed a lot in this life compared to his previous life. All of this was brought to him by Shang Junlin. He no longer had to face everything alone. No matter what happened, he could always see the man standing behind him silently when he looked back. As long as he nodded, the man would be able to shelter him from the storm. I will not let anyone take a Yu away from me. It was a vow and also a promise. Shun Yu raised his head and moved forward. He kissed Shang Junlin's lips. Your Majesty is so good. Shang Junlin pressed the back of Shun Yu's head and deepened the kiss. Shun Yu was kissed until he was in a daze. He did not even know when he had switched positions with Shang Junlin. The man supported him with one hand and used the other to brush away the scattered black hair on his neck. There seemed to be a cluster of flames jumping in his dark eyes. Shun Yu raised his head and looked slightly confused. Don't leave me. His waist was tightly restrained. The kisses fell like a storm. Red plum blossoms were printed on his snow-white skin. Every kiss seemed to want to rub him into his bones. Shang Junlin sent people to find the map left behind in the palace and ordered the hidden dragon guards to follow the traces to find the hiding place of the Ji family. Shun Yu also ordered his people to find the things left behind by his mother in the Count of Zhenbei's residence. In the next few days, Ji Wuwang did not appear in front of Shun Yu. Mu Shi sent the things found in the Count of Zhenbei's residence to Shun Yu. Count of Zhenbei did not dare to stop their actions. After Shen Qingran was taken away, there was no news. He did not know how the emperor would deal with Shen Qingran and the Count of Zhenbei's residence. He thought that he could use this visit to make a beautiful comeback and return with a high profile. Who would have thought that because of Shen Qingran's action, it would become the death of the Count of Zhenbei's residence? At this moment, Count of Zhenbei really resented Shen Qingran. He knew that Shen Qingran and Shun Yu did not get along, but he did not expect that Shen Qingran would do something to Shun Yu regardless of the consequences. Shen Qingran was a noble conferred by the emperor himself. Did he really want to drag the Count of Zhenbei's residence down with him? If he had known this earlier, he would have killed this unfilial son to end all troubles. Young master, Count of Zhenbei has executed concubine Yu, Mu Shi said while packing up the things that belonged to Shun Yu's mother found in the Count of Zhenbei's residence. Shun Yu was not surprised by this result at all. Not to mention concubine Yu, if Shen Qingran was still in the residence at this time, he would most likely be executed together with concubine Yu. Shun Yu had been paying attention to the Ji family's affairs these days and forgot about Shen Qingran, the culprit that caused him to fall into a coma. Shun Yu did not need to tidy up the things himself. Mu Shi and the palace servants would sort them out. Shun Yu looked for a while and went to find Shang Junlin. Yu came at the right time. They asked Shen Qingran about the characteristics of the person who gave him the medicine. I have already ordered a hunt. That person should also be a member of the Ji family, right? Shun Yu asked. Other than the person who was also from the Ji family, who else would have the medicine from the Ji family to specifically target him? Yes. Shun Yu then realized that Ji Wuwang was also there. He turned to look at him. Does this count as the trouble you brought me? I will deal with this person. Ji Wuwang's voice was colder than usual. Your Majesty, why is he here? Shun Yu walked towards Shang Junlin. He came to tell me about the person who wanted to harm you. Only in the face of the person who wanted to harm Shun Yu, Shang Junlin and Ji Wuwang's attitude reached a high level of unity. There is one more thing. Little Yu, didn't you ask brother to find a way to prove his method? I thought of it. Chapter 220. How do I prove it? You should have something left behind by your mother. There is a jade token that represents the identity of the Ji clan. Ji Wuwang took out his own. It looks the same as this one. If you find it, I will be able to prove my words. Shun Yu looked at the jade token in Ji Wuwang's hand. He did see a similar one among his mother's belongings. Mu Shi, go and get it. What can a jade token prove? Shang Junlin asked. It can prove that I am related to Xiao Yu and that I don't have any bad intentions towards Xiao Yu. It took some effort to go back and forth. Fortunately, the items had been sorted in advance. It was very convenient to find them. Mu Shi came in with a jade box. Under Shun Yu's instructions, she opened the box. There was a jade token sitting quietly inside. Whether it was the texture or the pattern, it was the same as the one in Ji Wuwang's hand. This jade token was sent to the palace together with Shun Yu's mother's belongings. Before this, Shen Yu himself didn't know the secret of the jade token. She took out the jade token and put it in Shen Yu's hand. You got it. How do you want to prove it? Ji Wuwang took the jade token calmly. When they got closer, there seemed to be some attraction between the two tokens. They kept getting closer to each other. Shang Junlin came over and frowned at the two tokens. What's going on? This jade token is a symbol of the clan's identity. I got this from my father. Only children of the same mother can get this kind of jade token. They are attracted to each other. Look. Under the gaze of several people, the surface of the jade token gradually changed. The pattern seemed to come alive and trembled. Ji Wuwang cut his fingertip and dripped blood on the jade token. The jade token that belonged to him slowly opened from the middle, revealing a space for a slip of paper. Shen Yu, this is, you can open it and see if your mother left any words for you. Shen Yu also wanted to know if his mother left him anything. He took a dagger from the side and cut his fingertip. Dark red blood seeped into the jade pendant, and the crack in the middle of the jade pendant slowly opened. There was a folded letter inside. Shen Yu took it out. He didn't open it directly, but asked, if I smash the jade tablet, can I get what's inside? No, you can only obtain it if you use the correct method to open it. If the jade tablet is broken, the things inside will be destroyed. Ji Wuwang explained. The Ji family was mysterious to begin with, so it wasn't strange for them to be able to create something like this. Shen Yu opened the letter. Due to the limitation of space, there wasn't much content in the letter. It gave a general introduction of the Ji family's situation and explained that if this letter was obtained under gentle circumstances, the person who helped him obtain the letter could be trusted. After Shen Yu finished reading it, he handed the letter to Shang Junlin. Ji Wuwang's lips moved as if he wanted to stop him, but in the end, he didn't say anything. The jade pendant was separated and returned to its original state. Shen Yu held the piece in his hand and looked at it several times. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have realized that there was something else about this jade pendant. My mother said that the Ji family forced her to accept the seal. That's why she tried to find a way to leave the clan. If you bring me back, will they really be willing to remove the seal for me? There were many things that were briefly mentioned in the letter. The huge mystery of Ji Wuwang's origin was finally revealed at this moment. They will be willing to. The current Ji family had become Ji Wuwang's sole authority. No one dared to disobey him. It was no longer the same situation as before. Bring young Master Ji to bandage his wound. Shang Junlin ordered. A palace servant quickly led Ji Wuwang to the side and bandaged the wound on his hand. The wound on Shen Yu's hand was personally bandaged by Shang Junlin. He didn't want Shen Yu to get injured, but he couldn't stop this matter. Shen Yu had always been very concerned about his mother's origin. Now that the clue was in front of him, he couldn't stop it. It's just a small wound. It's not a big deal. Seeing the distress in Shang Junlin's eyes, Shen Yu whispered. Shang Junlin carefully applied medicine. The wound wasn't big. Even if he didn't apply medicine, it didn't continue to bleed. If it wasn't for Shang Junlin's insistence, Shen Yu felt that it wouldn't matter if he didn't treat it. The jade pendant that belonged to Shen Yu's mother was put back into the jade box and handed over to Mu Shi to Yuzhang Palace. After accompanying Shang Junlin for a while, the two returned to Yuzhang Palace. Shen Yu, before I came, what did your majesty say to Ji Wuwang? Shang Junlin, it's about the person who wants to harm you. This person is very good at hiding. The hidden dragon guards tried to find clues several times, but they couldn't catch him. Shen Yu, how does your majesty plan to deal with Shen Qingran? Shang Junlin, he hurt a Yu, so he should pay the price. What does a Yu think? Shen Yu, your majesty can do whatever you want. I believe that your majesty will seek justice for me. Shen Qingran didn't have a good time in prison. Shang Junlin specially ordered that his life couldn't be harmed or relaxed. He would be interrogated every day. Da Huan's punishment was far more terrifying than he had imagined. In just a few days, he confessed everything that he should and shouldn't confess. According to his confession, he had tried to harm Shen Yu several times, but Shen Yu was lucky enough to avoid it. He also had many small tricks that wouldn't harm his life. After the confession was sorted out, it was sent to the palace by the Supreme Court. Shang Junlin flipped through the confessions one by one. He could almost imagine how little Shun Yu was like walking on thin ice in the residence of Count Bei because of Count Bei's favoritism. His heart was filled with pain. He was afraid that the young man who had bumped into him had been hurt so much in a place he couldn't see. She subconsciously ignored the fact that every time Shen Qingran's plan failed, it would make her unlucky. I don't want him to have an easy time. Do you understand? Shang Junlin's ice-cold gaze landed on the official from the Supreme Court who was kneeling on the ground. I understand. The air pressure in the surroundings was very low. The official tried his best to suppress the trembling of his body and tried his best to not let his voice sound strange. You may leave. Yes, Your Majesty. After bowing his head and retreating out of the hall, the official from the Supreme Court realized that his clothes were soaked in cold sweat. They knew how much His Majesty cared about His Majesty. It was easy to imagine what would happen to this person who was sent to prison for harming His Majesty. In this world, sometimes living was more painful than dying. For Shen Qingran, death was a kind of relief. However, Shang Junlin wouldn't allow him to be released so easily. Imperial physician Ji Yu received an imperial edict to return to the capital early. He had been living a life isolated from the world in Lin County and didn't know what had happened in the capital. Eunuch, why did His Majesty let me return to the capital early? Imperial physician Ji Yu received the edict and was a little confused. The eunuch who came to announce the edict knew that Imperial physician Ji Yu was valued by His Majesty because of His Majesty, so he whispered a few words. His Majesty ordered Imperial physician Ji Yu to return because of your medical skills. His Majesty also hopes that you can return quickly. Imperial physician Ji Yu understood. It was probably because of the matter with His Highness. When he asked for an edict to come, His Majesty refused to let him go. Fortunately, things here were on the right track. Even if he left, it would not be affected. After handing over the other physicians, Imperial physician Ji Yu was brought out of Lin County. Can I go and tell my family? Imperial physician Ji Yu asked as he lifted the curtain of the carriage. Imperial physician Ji Yu, you mean to see General Ji Yu, right? General Ji Yu is waiting for you in front. Time was tight. There wasn't much time left for Imperial physician Ji Yu and Ji Yu Huai. Imperial physician Ji Yu said a few words to Ji Yu Huai and set off on the road back to the capital. Ji Yu Huai stood by the roadside and watched the carriage leave. General, we caught the person. A subordinate walked over to report after seeing the carriage leave. They had been here for so many days and finally caught the real suspicious person. If Ji Yu Huai hadn't heard the news and wanted to see Imperial physician Ji Yu, they would have already interrogated him. Ji Yu Huai turned around. The sooner we solve this, the sooner we can return to the capital. The journey took more than 10 days. After returning to the capital, Imperial physician Ji Yu only had time to tidy himself up before he was summoned to the palace. You've worked hard to call Imperial physician Ji Yu back in such a hurry. Shun Yu leaned on the soft couch and said softly. During this time, his body was getting weaker and weaker. Even with Ji Wuwang's medicine temporarily suppressing it, the effects of the withdrawal were still increasing. Why is His Majesty? With just a glance, Imperial physician Ji Yu knew why Shang Junlin wanted him to return to the capital. Shun Yu's face was pale. Compared to the first time he saw him, he was even weaker. It was as if he was suffering from a serious illness and his vitality was gradually draining away. Shang Junlin sat on the other side. He helped Shun Yu up and let the youth lean on him. Let's take a look at you first. Imperial physician Ji Yu stepped forward and took Shun Yu's pulse. His brows gradually furrowed. After a long while, he let go of his hand. His Majesty's pulse is very strange. The loss of vitality is very serious, but we can't find the cause. Imperial physician Ji Yu said a lot of his findings. In summary, it was similar to what the other imperial physicians said. I'll let someone tell you the specific situation of His Majesty's body. Meng Chang, bring Imperial physician Ji Yu to see Ji Wuwang. Because he didn't know the reason for Shun Yu's sudden weakness, Imperial physician Ji Yu didn't dare to use medicine rashly. I've already made arrangements. In 2 days, we will set off for the Ji clan. Shang Junlin held Shun Yu's wrist and gently stroked it. He couldn't watch Shun Yu get weaker day by day and do nothing. In private, he talked to Ji Wuwang about whether he could remove the withdrawal for Shun Yu in the palace. Do we have to go to the Ji clan? In the empty palace, Shang Junlin's voice was indiscernible. Yes, only there can completely remove the withdrawal. I originally thought that the medicine I brought could suppress the withdrawal. I didn't expect that it could only prevent people from falling into a coma, but it couldn't stop the withdrawal from working. Moreover, because of the medicine in Shen Qingran's hands, the condition that should have appeared after little Yu became weak was triggered in advance. I know you don't want to, but time waits for no one. You must make a decision as soon as possible. I understand. Pulling away from the memories, Shang Junlin's eyes were filled with all kinds of emotions. Finally, they returned to silence. Shun Yu opened his eyes tiredly. Your Majesty will go with me. Will Da Huan be okay? With the Prime Minister and the others, nothing will happen. Shang Junlin lifted Shun Yu's chin and looked into his eyes. When I just ascended the throne, I was out fighting all year round. The court was not as peaceful as it is now. Nothing happened. Don't worry. Your Majesty, when do you plan to leave? Shun Yu asked. By now, Shun Yu and Shang Junlin both knew that this trip to the Ji clan was imperative. Chapter 221. Let's wait a few more days until we catch the person who tried to harm you. We know nothing about the Ji family, so we're too passive. Indeed, Shun Yu was only physically tired, but his brain wasn't affected. He raised his hand and pushed the hand on his chin away. This Ji family is too secretive. Not to mention anything else, just that jade tablet alone, Da Huan could not find anyone who could make such a precise design. After that day, Shun Yu had tried to open the jade tablet to see the structure inside, but no matter what he did, he could not open it. If he wanted to forcefully open it, the only way was to destroy it. Shun Yu was only interested in the structure inside, but he didn't intend to destroy it, so he could only give up. Even if it was secretive, if one wanted to investigate, they could still find a lot of things. The Ji family had a long history, and its most active period was in the chaotic times before Da Huan was established. The Ji family acted mysteriously, and they had some skills that ordinary people couldn't explain, similar to witchcraft. While they were sought after by many, they were also feared by many. Later, something happened. The Ji family offended the public and was besieged. In that battle, many people died, and both sides suffered heavy losses. The surviving Ji family members had to escape into the mountains to recuperate. After this incident, there was almost no news about the Ji family, until the Shang family's ancestor accidentally entered the Ji family's land and stayed there for 3 days. Why was the Ji family besieged? Shun Yu put down the secret letter in his hand, puzzled. There are many different opinions about this matter. Some people think that the Ji family and a royal family at that time fell in love with the same woman, so they fought. Some people say that the Ji family secretly harmed many of the family's carefully cultivated successors. There are all kinds of opinions. Shang Junlin sat upright, consciously acting as a human pillow for Shun Yu. The Ji family saved your Shang family's ancestor, which means that they don't have much conflict with outsiders. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone out of their way to save him. A person was in the deep mountains and was injured. As long as they were ruthless and didn't care, the chances of this person surviving were very small. Shun Yu. And the mysterious ability mentioned in the letter, what is it? Shang Junlin. Rumor has it that the Ji family can control people's hearts. This was one of the most important reasons why the Ji family was feared. Manipulating people's minds. Shun Yu didn't know why, but his heart skipped a beat. Was there really someone in this world who could manipulate people's minds? Because he had to go to the Ji clan, Shang Junlin had been very busy recently. He needed to hand over all kinds of things. During this period of time, the Prime Minister and other ministers who were valued by Shang Junlin had entered the imperial study more frequently than before. Shun Yu found a time when Shang Junlin was not around and went to see Ji Wuwang alone. I thought I'd never see you alone. Ji Wuwang sat in front of a stone table in the courtyard. Sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves and branches, landing on his body. I didn't want to see you alone before because I didn't know your position. I don't want to put myself in unnecessary danger. Shun Yu walked to the man in white and sat down. Ji Wuwang said, "What do you want from me today?" Shun Yu looked at the man's calm face. "I want to know, can the Ji clan really control people's minds?" Sure enough, when you came, you gave me a big surprise. Of course not, that's something only gods can do. No matter how much power the Ji clan has, they're still just humans. Ji Wuwang's voice was cold. Who told you this? When the Ji clan traveled outside, they left a lot of rumors. Shun Yu calmly replied. Rumors are always exaggerated. The Ji clan can't control people's minds, but they can use special methods to influence people's thoughts. It's just that the conditions to achieve it are very harsh, especially now that ancient books have been lost. Almost no one knows this method. Shun Yu keenly felt that Ji Wuwang's mood was not right, so he didn't continue the topic. You said before that if I wasn't affected by the medicine, after the weak crown, I would gradually become weak. If I didn't solve the Jie Yin in time, how long could I live? At most 2 years. Shun Yu was silent. In his previous life, he didn't know about the existence of the Jie Yin, but he had lived for more than 2 years. It didn't make sense that he had the Jie Yin in his body in this life and not in his previous life. Is there any other possibility? Unless there was a Ji clan member who used the power of their bloodline to suppress it for you before you became an adult. As for how long they could suppress it, it's hard to say. It was as if there was a fog in front of him. As long as he stretched out his hand, he would be able to see the truth of his previous life. Shun Yu recalled the events of his previous life. He was very sure that he had never heard of the Ji clan. His health had always been poor. All the doctors he had seen said that it was a congenital deficiency that couldn't be cured. So, in his previous life, who was it that suppressed the Jie Yin in his body without him knowing? Was the love he had for Prince Yu in his previous life also influenced by external forces? Why are you asking these questions? The cold voice pulled Shun Yu back from his thoughts. He narrowed his eyes and suppressed the various emotions in them. Can these two things be done at the same time? Suppressing the Jie Yin and other thoughts. Why are you suddenly asking this? Are you worried that I will do something? Ji Wuwang asked in return. I'm not suspecting you. I just suddenly thought of something that happened before. Someone asserted that whoever obtains the Shun clan will obtain the world. Because of this sentence, Prince Yu deliberately approached me and Shen Qingran. Nonsense. You don't know what you're talking about. How can the world be changed because of a person's words? The person who said this probably doesn't have good intentions. Ji Wuwang suddenly thought of something and raised his voice. Your Majesty wouldn't be together with you because of this sentence, right? What are you thinking about? I'm talking about Prince Yu. He has already been executed. Who said this sentence? It was a person who called himself Zhu Wang. He seemed to have some opinions about my mother. Shun Yu told him about Zhu Wang. He suddenly thought of something. He and Shang Junlin couldn't find much information about Zhu Wang. Perhaps they could find a breakthrough from Ji Wuwang. I will investigate this matter. Zhu Wang is now locked up in prison. Do you want to see him? After Shang Junlin left the court, he didn't see Shen Yu in Yuzhang Palace. After asking the palace servants, he found out that Shun Yu had come to Ji Wuwang's place. Along the way, he just happened to hear Shen Yu's last sentence. See who? I really can't leave you for even a moment, Ji Wuwang whispered. How can the monarch of a country be so clingy? Ji Wuwang originally had a lot of opinions about this man who had kidnapped his younger brother. Especially since this person was the emperor of Da Huan. He knew that the emperor had 3 palaces and 6 courtyards and countless beauties. No matter how he thought about it, such a person wasn't worthy of his younger brother. It wasn't until he found out that Shang Junlin only had Shen Yu in his harem and spread the word that he would only have Shen Yu in his life that he didn't directly run to the palace to snatch him away. After entering the palace, he found out how the two of them got along in private. After feeling Shang Junlin's actions, he reluctantly acknowledged Shang Junlin's existence. If it wasn't for the fact that Shang Junlin treated Shen Yu sincerely, he wouldn't have agreed to bring Shang Junlin back to the Da Huan. Hearing Ji Wuwang's words, Shen Yu's movement stopped. As if he hadn't heard anything, he walked towards Shang Junlin. I'm talking about Zhu Wang. This person had been locked up in the dark prison for a period of time. In the middle of it, he had tried to escape several times but failed. Later, he seemed to have given up and abandoned himself to despair. I will send someone to bring you to see him. Ji Wuwang and Shang Junlin didn't have a harmonious relationship. Hearing this, he only nodded slightly. Is you tired? With Shen Yu around, Shang Junlin didn't want to care about Ji Wuwang and walked out with Shen Yu. Eunuch Meng brought the palace servants forward. Young Master Ji, if you want to see Zhu Wang, please follow this servant. Eunuch Meng arranged for someone to bring Ji Wuwang to see Zhu Wang and returned to Shang Junlin's side to serve him. Shen Yu was in good spirits today. Shang Junlin didn't directly bring him back to Yuzhang Palace. Instead, he wandered around the palace aimlessly. Yu has been worried about Lin County. Today, he received a report saying that the epidemic in Lin County has been effectively controlled. In a few days, the lockdown will be lifted. Ji Yu Hui also sent a letter saying that he caught 2 suspicious people. They will continue to investigate. As they walked, Shang Junlin told Shen Yu about what had happened these days. Will it affect Imperial Physician Gu's early return? No. He said that when he left, the epidemic in Lin County was already under control. Moreover, this epidemic was man-made. As long as the right method is found, it will be easier to solve it. He has already told Imperial Physician Wu and the others about the cure. The scenery in the palace was very good. The two walked under the shade of the trees. The warm sunlight occasionally fell on their bodies, but it was quickly covered by the shadows of the swaying leaves. The news that Shang Junlin was leaving the palace hadn't been released yet. Before he left, there were some things that had to be resolved. The hidden dragon guards and Ji Wuwang's people worked together to find the Ji family members hiding in the capital. They were caught by Ji Wuwang's subordinates and brought to the place where Ji Wuwang stayed outside the palace. I will interrogate the traitors of the Ji family. Ji Wuwang had a smile on his face, but it gave people a cold feeling. Shen Yu had never seen such an aura from Ji Wuwang ever since he met him. You can interrogate them, but in the end, I will deal with them. Shang Junlin's tone was very cold. Okay. The two of them reached an agreement. Ji Wuwang went to deal with the people who wanted to harm Shen Yu, while Shang Junlin brought Shen Yu back to Yuzhang Palace. Your Majesty, why did your relationship with Ji Wuwang suddenly improve? There is no harm in letting him interrogate the people of the Ji family first. Your Majesty, aren't you afraid that he will deliberately hide things? Everyone inside is my people. What can he hide? Why did he agree? Because after interacting with each other for a period of time, Shang Junlin could feel that Ji Wuwang cared about Shen Yu. Without Shen Yu knowing, the two of them had secretly reached a temporary agreement. In order to eliminate all possibilities of harming Shen Yu, they were willing to shake hands and make peace. Your Majesty, are you hiding something from me? Shen Yu hooked his arm around the man's shoulder, forcing him to lower his head. I spend every day with Yu. What can I hide from Yu? Their gazes met, and an indescribable feeling spread around them. Shen Yu closed her eyes and kissed him slowly. Bang! The kettle fell to the ground. The little eunuch who was dozing off at the side hurriedly ran over. Which palace are you from? Why are you so clumsy? I'm sorry. This servant is new. The movement outside interrupted the charming atmosphere in the room. Shen Yu pushed Shang Junlin. His hot palm pressed against Shen Yu's skin. Shen Yu was scalded and subconsciously stepped back, but was pressed back by the man. Shang Junlin whispered in his ear, Yu, focus. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.